Greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. The first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival has 3 film debuts, world premieres for you this week. Today, Blue dropped from Yakima, Washington, a Yakima, Washington filmmaker. Very interesting. Our longest film to date. Very exciting. Every time I get a film in, it's like Christmas Day. We have a children's music video dropping tomorrow and a short art film on Thursday about the color red. Tune in, find out. And we also have just a few more days to vote for the official poster for the festival. Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media, and lest we forget, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I am once again Robcasting it. You Imagination Connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode number 535. As I just said, the Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival is rolling on. We have 3 premieres in a row, today, tomorrow. Well, today we had a noon premiere, tomorrow and Thursday. Who knows, by the time Thursday's over, we might have a Friday and Saturday and Sunday premiere. Very exciting. I'm very surprised and delighted by the diversity of film entries so far. I expect that as we move into the rest of October, the latter half of October and November, those film entries are just going to get wildly more diverse and interesting. Very excited for all of the people that have participated so far. You know, I didn't know a film festival is only as good as its entries, so I didn't even know if we were going to get any films. And now I think we're up to 10 official selections. Pretty exciting. All thanks to you members of the Post-Geek Singularity. And as you all know, we now have memberships to the channel, and we're kind of going to do, I decided that I'm going to make Fridays you guys are going to pick. I'm going to come up with a bunch of different topics, probably not a bunch, but like 3 or 4 different topics, and let you vote on them. So if you are a PGS hero, you can vote for the topics. And then, of course, when we get to 50 or 60 members, I'm going to start doing the Zoom parties, the after show. Not Zoom parties, but the after show. But we have a Zoom party coming up that's available to all Post-Geek Singularity members, everybody. Our Zoom parties are pretty fun. This was suggested by our first couple, Candida and Claude, and we're going to have on the 24th of October a Halloween Zoom party. Now, the only way you can get in, you have to wear a costume. It is mandatory. But remember, it's only like this, and I don't care what it is, but come on, you got to try hard. But I think it'll be fun. And then after that, we are going to roll right into whining about movies. We'll go from the Zoom party into whining about movies. And the whining about movies on that day is David Cronenberg's The Fly, continuing on our celebration of Halloween. Tonight at 7:30, we discuss Roman Polanski's superlative Rosemary's Baby, one of my favorite. I mean, I consider it a horror film. It's a psychological horror film with supernatural underpinnings, but it's one of my favorite. It's not just one of my favorite horror films, it's one of my favorite films of all time, and I'm excited to discuss it. The Ace, the Arbiter of Cinematic Excellence, and I will be on doing that, which is a lot of fun. So, interesting, this the state of the entertainment business, as somebody who has literally been studying the entertainment business, not just movies, but I love the entertainment business, and I've been studying it, I don't know, I guess since I started getting heavily to home video when I was 13. I was working in home video when it was brand new. And I became a real watcher, reading the trades and things like that at 13, seeing how the business was shaking out. And I have to tell you, in all of the time that I've been doing these things, basically 40 years, 4 decades, I have never seen where the entertainment business is. It's very strange. I can't tell you. I mean, obviously, as far as movies go, the places where we show movies are closed, shuttered, and some of them aren't. I mean, AMC said they might not be able to survive beyond 2020 into 2021. They might have to start selling off their real estate. Who knows? I also don't know, how does Hollywood survive without the theatrical marketplace? It's going to be a strange time, and to that end, I found this very interesting. So this news dropped on Deadline. Mike Fleming dropped it at 10:30 this morning. Will Amazon take on Eddie Murphy's Coming to America sequel because of the uncertain theatrical marketplace? Well, what's so strange to me about this is, of course, Eddie Murphy recently had his movie on Netflix, Dolomite Is My Name. Paramount was talking about doing deals with Netflix for like Beverly Hills 4. So Amazon's a rival studio. Paramount has announced, along with CBS, that they're going to start their own Paramount Plus network. I would think that if you're going to debut a film anywhere, this would be the film to do it. I mean, certainly it's a sequel to a beloved film, and I found this pretty interesting that this came to pass. The deal is closed. When this article was first published, they didn't know if it was going to happen. Variety then published that it did happen. And the deal is closed by Amazon. Amazon picked this movie up for $125 million. Now, that's a big chunk of change. And obviously, it shows, I think, why there's an incentive to sell the movie off. But still, is the slumping theatrical marketplace about to lose another plum film title from its movie marquees? Yes. Deadline hears there's a deal brewing between Amazon and Paramount to move Eddie Murphy's Coming to America sequel to a streaming premiere. Paramount had the picture slated for Christmas release, but the uncertainty of the marketplace, as evidenced by the low U.S. grosses for movies like Tenet, which in a non-pandemic moment would have grossed significantly more, has made putting a movie in theaters a risky proposition. I don't believe a deal is closed, and it's possible there could be a change of heart, but the talks are serious, I hear. Well, Variety reports that it is done. The deal is done. In a deal worth roughly $125 million, insiders say the expected streaming premiere date is December 18th. Final details are being hammered out, sources say, including 2 complex consumer marketing tie-ins with McDonald's and the whiskey-browned Crown Royal, which are expected to transfer over to Amazon Studios with the film. Murphy, who produced, as well as the stars in the film, has to give his blessing. The sale is said to be a priority for Amazon Studios chief Jennifer Salke, who had been on the hunt for more commercial fare with the recent acquisition of the sequel to Borat and another Paramount acquisition in the Tom Clancy adaptation Without Remorse, starring Michael B. Jordan. The studio also picked up Regina King's One Night in Miami, which is expected to be an Oscar contender. There is no sign, this goes back to Deadline now, there is no sign of when the country's 2 biggest markets, New York and Los Angeles, will reopen, and next year's schedule will be severely crowded with all kinds of event films, and that includes picks like Wonder Woman 84, the 007 film, they say Die Another Day, but it's No Time to Die, and the Paramount releases A Quiet Place 2 and Top Gun Maverick, which is pushed back because of the pandemic, and could likely move again if things don't change quickly. There is a revenue event to be had here, and sources said that this transaction is likely going to be worth in the neighborhood of $125 million. According to Variety, it is. Add to that the relief for executives not to have to sweat worrying about a fraction of the theatrical or theater-going audience showing up for a movie they would flock to at any other moment. It's a new chapter of beloved movies starring Murphy, who showed in Dolomite Is My Name and in his Saturday Night Live hosting stint that he has lost nothing off his fastball. This is another blow to exhibitors. The original did $288 million in global ticket sales in 1988. The deal is comparable to films like Trolls, Mulan, and Soul moving to streaming platforms, only this one involves an outside streamer by necessity. In the sequel, Murphy's ruler of Zamunda character Akeem learns he has a long-lost son in the United States and must return to America to meet the unlikely heir to the throne. Craig Brewer, who also directed Dolomite Is My Name, directs. It is the second deal between Paramount and Amazon after the Michael Jordan star Without Remorse, an adaptation of the Tom Clancy bestseller. And Amazon just picked up Borat. Now, it's interesting to me because obviously if they're launching a streaming service, Paramount Plus, they're doing a rebranding. CBS All Access is turning into Paramount Plus. I find it odd that they wouldn't use these. I mean, these are marquee titles that people want to see that would be definitely a choice. I mean, I would have signed up for a Paramount Plus immediately to watch both Without Remorse, because I'm a huge Tom Clancy fan, and to watch this. But now Amazon has this, Without Remorse, and Borat. Those are some choice titles. But of course, Amazon already exists. So very interesting. I don't know really what this says about the Paramount relationship with Amazon. I mean, I honestly thought that maybe Netflix would have bought Paramount at one point. I was kind of thinking that was the way it was going to go. But again, I mean, I understand $125 million for Paramount. That's cash strapped. That's a nice, healthy infusion of cash that keeps that studio going. And if they have an ongoing relationship with Amazon, I mean, I just don't know what that says about them trying to launch a Paramount Plus streaming service if they're selling off these titles. Because I would imagine that these are titles that aren't going to come back from. I mean, maybe Amazon's licensing them for a finite period of time. They return back to Paramount, but I tend to doubt that. I think it's an outright buyout, and then Amazon would own these things, which to me is fascinating. Again, I don't know what all of this means. We're in very, very much uncharted waters. There's a sea change happening throughout the entire industry. On one hand, interesting things are going on, such as physical media. Obviously, Paramount announced that they're finally putting out the Godfather films in 4K, but not until 2022, even though they're releasing The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone at the end of this year, but they're not releasing it in 4K. Maybe they're holding off until they can put it all in the box set. Lord of the Rings, as we know, the remastering of Lord of the Rings is being released in 4K without all the special features that I worked on, but those are coming out in a big box set next summer, I guess, 2021. Now, for those of you who are going, wait, what? That is what they did with the films, the theatrical versions of the movies. They announced that they were going to release the theatrical versions, and then the next year they were going to release the extended versions with all of the special features. So the fact that they've already said all this, you can't yell. Don't call shenanigans. They're being upfront and transparent about what they're doing. It's just interesting to me, though. I hope we're not seeing the demise of the theatrical marketplace. I don't think it's good for the industry, as we were talking about on the John Campea show this morning. The problem with not having movie theaters and just releasing things on streaming is that you're losing a gigantic revenue stream. I mean, when you make a movie like Avengers Endgame, the reason that you can make that movie and spend the amount of money, I mean, they said it, $350 million? I'll bet it costs more. But the only reason you can make movies like that is because you know that they're going to make, well, they didn't know it was going to make $3 billion, but I bet they probably figured it would be a $2 billion movie. And knowing you get $2 billion before it goes into the ancillary markets, that's a huge incentive. I mean, coming off of 2019's box office, there's a lot of money to be made, over $10 billion at the worldwide box office. Without worldwide theatrical, you're leaving that money behind. And who's going to make movies like Avengers Endgame or Infinity War if they can't get their returns, if they can't get their return on that money? So I see every one of these things chipping away at the movie-going infrastructure, the theatrical infrastructure. But on the other hand, I understand Paramount got to eat, and they need an influx of cash. And $125 million for a movie like Coming to America, I'm sure they didn't spend that much money on it. So maybe they actually made a healthy chunk of change. And Paramount needs the influx of cash. I just hope that I don't know. I mean, my favorite thing in life has always been going to the movies, and it's been consistent. It's been something I've liked to do as a little kid, and I hope that this isn't a graphic illustration of things to come, which it could very well be. So, what do you guys think? I don't know. So yeah, there you go. I have a lot of letters. I have a lot of letters from all y'all beautiful people. A lot of letters. I'm gonna just jump right into them. There's letters I've been missing. I'm just gonna jump right in. Marnie Rutland writes in and says, Robert, can your festival obtain official recognition from the IMDb? You know what, Marnie, to be honest, this is the first time anyone's asked. It never occurred to me. I mean, I have official recognition on the IMDb, so when I submit something, they take it seriously. It gets up very quickly. That's a really interesting question. I don't know. I know someone who started a festival she put on every other year using independent cinemas for the screenings, advertising through Facebook. 10 years in, so 5 festivals in, she got the deputy mayor of Toronto to write a letter congratulating her festival while Rob Ford was in the hospital. She put this letter on her website, and this helped persuade the IMDb to take her festival seriously. Immediately, a friend pointed out that this person suddenly had a whack of new titles on her IMDb, including a couple that were suspect, like a documentary that was just an interview of her boyfriend. As much as I disliked this person who kept her name off the site, her long-term goal of getting titles onto the IMDb was effective. Also, just wondering, if Ezra Miller can claim to be non-binary, can't we all claim to be aliens? I mean, if it is my truth and what's going on in my head is what really counts, and not the lack of tentacles or antennae, isn't the assertion itself proof enough? Alien women are women, and therefore women are alien women. All I offer is that my planet has a name that cannot be spelled in English or pronounced by earthling mouths. We have 7 gods of love that are only concerned with peace, and if someone worships the wrong name for God, there has to be war. Many of the gods have similar sounding names, and poor pronunciation has caused massive genocide. I hesitate to disclose the most embarrassing mutation of our species. You may choose to not read this grotesque aspect. The food I eat gets processed through the body, and what is not utilized as energy causes me to feel discomfort in lower parts, and I have to excuse myself wherever I am to discreetly go squat over a basin where a solid, horrible-smelling material emerges from my body. The evidence has to be wiped away and flushed, and I must wash my hands so that nobody will learn of my shame. If I were to submit a film, it would certainly not be about any of those issues. We will have to be at least as classy as Wiener Killer. That from Marnie Rutland. Well, Marnie, you've just become one of my favorite people. You know, what I find really interesting is, look, I don't begrudge anyone's truths. If they want to have truths that are true to them, that's fine. I just don't want your truth imposed onto the scientific method. And at the end of the day, all of this talk and all of these beliefs are fine. Just don't let them interfere in true science and what we need to be looking into. I mean, to be honest, I do think, I mean, I understand where you're going with this, but I do think that there are things that will eventually be diagnosed scientifically. I don't necessarily know if I think that anybody that sort of deviates from the biological norm in terms of their sexuality or their gender identification, I think a lot of that eventually we will have the actual science to confirm these things. At least, I mean, from my own experience, knowing people, as I said, I've had a lot of gay friends since I was young, and I've known a few trans people in my life, and I believe, honestly, that they were born that way. That through whatever natural processes that, you know, causes the great wide spectrum of people to be born, that they are, in fact, eventually we will have the scientific knowledge to prove that that's a naturally occurring. I mean, obviously, it's a minority thing that happens, but it's actually, something scientific, and I think it will be measurable. Do I think all people who declare themselves non-binary, do I think they're going to find a scientific explanation? Not necessarily. But I do think that we just haven't had science get there yet or look into these things yet, but we'll figure it out. Eventually, also along the lines of my idea that some art is objectively good. I mean, John Campy and I are always banging around. He's like, all art is subjective. And I'm like, no, I think there are objective things about art that eventually will be able to be measured. We haven't ever tried to come up with the devices or the things that we need to measure yet. But I think we will. And I think that, I keep thinking about the Foundation trilogy, and, well, I say trilogy, there's a lot more Foundation books, but like Harry Seldon coming up with the idea of psychohistory, where Harry Seldon, as a historian, figured out a way to chart the rise and fall of civilizations, empires, and once he had that knowledge, he could predict when, say, the galactic civilization that currently exists, he's on the capital city or capital planet, capital city of Trantor, and figures out, okay, I know when our civilization is going to fall. Scientifically, he's figured that out. Not many people want to hear it, but I think eventually we will be able to figure these things out. And I do think that there is an objective reality to art and things that we find subjective. That's why you look at the 100 greatest movies on the AFI list, they're pretty consistent amongst all kinds of people that vote, because there is an objective. Things are objectively good. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has to like those things, but that doesn't mean your subjective opinion doesn't really have any bearing on the reality of whether something's good or not. Just like whatever you happen to think or whatever you happen to feel or whatever your truth is does not necessarily mean that it has any bearing on the scientific reality of something. But, again, all of these things are in flux, and I could be wrong, and we could figure out, in 20 years, different things. I don't know. But Marnie, that was a very funny letter you wrote. I thank you for that. I don't think that I would try and get the first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. I'm not going to try and get any kind of official accreditation anywhere until we've pulled off at least one. I'm going to see how it goes. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be it's going to be the audience that decides whether this film festival is a good idea. I mean, at the end of the day, I think right now, I've enjoyed the wide variety of creativity that we've received, and the different skill levels. And there was somebody that took me to task on the comments on YouTube, and they said, what if they are clearly not a fan of mine. I don't know what they've heard, but they're like, working with you, you're not the master of fun and wonder. Well, I beg to differ, and I asked, what have you heard? And if you're going to if you're going to come to my page and accuse me of something, then accuse me of something, and let's discuss it. Don't be vague, and don't come on my page and accuse me of wanting to rip off filmmakers. But he did ask an interesting question, and he asked, what if one of these films goes viral? If I got a film and the film festival, it went viral, and it ended up, like, say, getting 1 million views. Well, I'll tell you, if I have a film and it were to suddenly go viral, somebody else's film, and it had 1 million views, I would stand to make, the channel would make about $4,500 off a film that had 1 million views. So this guy was saying, are you going to share that revenue with the filmmaker? Well, that's an interesting question. And I thought of it, and I said, well, one of the things that I haven't taken into account is we don't know how much this film festival is ultimately going to cost. We're making trophies. We're giving cash prizes. We're going to print posters. All of these things require money. And I would say that any money that was generated by the festival, and that includes YouTube ad revenue, would go back into the festival. and any movie monies that we made would be pushed forward to do a second festival. And the idea is the only thing we ask of the filmmakers is that we get the right to exclusively have these films on the website exclusively until February 28th, 2021. So that's only until, 2 months into the next year. Then you can do whatever you want. Now, we're going to keep the films up on our page, but that's the only thing that we ask is that, and I don't think that's a lot to ask for the film festival for what we're doing. And he was taking me to task. One of the filmmakers wrote in and said, look, this is exposure. And we're also, part of our job at this film festival is to promote it, which we have not sent out press releases to the media yet. And hopefully we'll do that, and the net will be cast wider. We'll get more films in. I have no idea how many films we're going to get in. I've none. I knew that when we started this, that I knew I was going to get a film from Patrick Keller and Dieter Bastian. That's it. And I had no idea when I first started. So I'm like, okay, I'll get one movie. And every other movie since then has been a gift. I didn't know B.L. Alley was going to make a movie. I didn't know he was going to make The Trip. I didn't know that. And then after that, I had no idea. And now we've received some pretty interesting films. And again, films from all over the world. So, who knows? Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see where it all shakes out. But Marnie, I don't know. Your initial question is, will I get the film festival? Will they recognize it as a real film festival? It depends. I think it really depends what happens and what I try and do with the festival. So, who knows? This one comes from Renato Valley. Renato Valley says, bien le bonjour à toi, I think. If we were the crew of a Federation starship, I ask you, Mr. Burnett, would you prefer to be our captain or our Q? If I may, I'd like to share this thought. I love to write fiction. It seems every time I do, I learn something about myself and the process, at least my process. Like this letter, I edited about 50 times. February of 2019, a young man, age 92, a mentor, died. He was a prolific writer. He wrote a few books, but he wrote mainly plays for the theater. I like to believe I learned the basics by reading his stories and manuscripts. After his death, I had an idea for a play. My humble way to pay him my respects and my love. If you are a believer, it's never too late. During the year it took to write the play, I learned a lot about the process and about myself. One truth is undeniable. You have to write what you know. Same as to say you have to write about yourself or put yourself into what you write. I am not ashamed to say that in the year's span while writing my play, I once or twice, or maybe more, had to stop to wipe a runaway tear. But I also learned that taking something out is also a part of writing. You have to choose your battles. You have to choose your themes. You have to choose your tone, which means the sacrifice of a reply or a reaction or a paragraph or a page. I'd like to hear from yourself and other writers about that. But you have to be a good judge. Sometimes you have to be harsh, but always be fair to your work. And that I am still learning. I will leave you with one Nate observation. Since I recognize that erasing is part of writing, I see it more and more in the movies I watch. The first time was with Captain Marvel. Man, I would have cut that scene at the S.H.I.E.L.D. morgue when they lifted to sheet to see what Skrull junk looks like. The trial never ended. Renato Valley. Interesting letter, Renato. I mean, look, I'll tell you this. The first thing, I've actually written a few stories that I would say got published. One was a story that I wrote for my high school literary journal, and it's funny. I'll show it to you actually. So this is it's funny because I found it and knocked. This is my high school literary journal, Pegasus. And I wrote this story, and I just knocked. I've been carrying this around for almost 35 years. This is the story I wrote. It's a 3-page story called Repentance, and it was, you had to submit it. It got picked, and it was a short story. But when I wrote this short story, it was twice as long. And really, the story was kind of a one-note story, and it's basically about a priest that dies, and he's made it to the afterlife, and he thinks that he's going to receive his just rewards, and he actually meets what he thinks is Christ, but then Christ tells him that, as a priest, you've denied half of your God-given instincts, and you haven't lived a life the way you should have. You have not drank of existence the way you should have. And the priest, because he's a priest, gets cast out into the flames of hell. Of course, that's something you'd write in high school. But when I wrote it, I realized that story, it's just a one-note joke. It's not a joke, but it's the kind of thing you write in high school thinking you're being really profound. It's not that profound. But it was twice as long, and I realized I had to cut it down and just keep it going. And then when we were writing the screenplay for Free Enterprise, which we ended up making, the first draft was 250 pages. And what we did was we just regurgitate anything that we could think of. We would write scenes that went nowhere. I mean, we had whole dream sequences where the characters wound up in a mirror universe where there was no William Shatner. And I mean, we anything and everything, because what you're doing is you're exploring ideas. And I think when you're writing and when you're making films, but mostly when you're writing, what you want to do is you want to tap into everything that you're thinking about in terms of the story that you're writing. So nothing is off limits. You just explore the idea from many different avenues, and you write and you rewrite and you cut and you rewrite some more and you cut and write and add and edit, and it's an ongoing process. And it's sort of you chip away at it until you find it, and you find it the way that you want it to be. But you can't limit yourself when you're writing. But I also think that there's a discipline involved with that as well, because you can get caught up in editorial. Like, one of the things that I believe in when you're writing anything, whether it's a short story, whether it's a screenplay, whether it's a book. I've never written a book, but I've always wanted to. But I know the same applies. You have to keep going. You might read 30 pages and you go back and you reread those 30 pages, and you're like, oh, this isn't good, I'm going to rewrite it. Don't do that, because that's a trap. You'll never finish. What you have to do is it's writing is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you have to write, get to the end, finish whatever it is that you're writing, then go back and edit it, because then you've completed something. And psychologically in your mind, it's like, okay, I got to the end of the story. Now I'm going to go back and do the same thing. You go back through the whole thing again. You don't just rewrite the first 30 pages over and over again. You edit. You start from the beginning and go all the way through, and just keep doing that. Same is true of a movie. You edit, then finally, eventually, you have a whole film from beginning to end, and then you start going through it. With a film, non-linearly, you can jump around. You can do that with a book too, but you gotta keep going. You gotta keep moving. Anyway, that's what I have to say about that. This one comes from Jordan Matthews. Jordan Matthews says, "Hey Rob, I was hoping to make a film for your film festival. My only question can it be animated, and if it requires dialogue, or if I'm able to convey the story strictly visually? Thanks for the help, Jordan Matthews." Jordan, if you want to make an animated film, I think you absolutely should, but don't ask me whether you should have dialogue or convey your story totally visually without dialogue. That, my friend, that is up to you and all of your creativity. And I would not be one to step in and say what you should or shouldn't do. All I can tell you is that if you submit an animated film to me, if it has no dialogue, or if it's full of dialogue, I'll play it, assuming, it's not horribly offensive. But yeah, I think you can do both. I've seen a lot of great animated films that have no dialogue. So I would say it's up to you and all of your creativity. So there you go. Marnie Rutland writes in another letter. It's a quick one. Rob, just saying, here is how people can explain Tenet. A task force from the future uses time travel to prevent a suicidal supervillain from obtaining an apocalyptic weapon. They recruit a law enforcement operative who has proven his integrity, but who is not sure what his overall purpose might be until he finds out that he has already proven himself for years and that he is more in charge than he thought. I suspect that people make more work for themselves by not simply surrendering to a movie and trying to second guess it. Well, that's interesting. I mean, that's concise and clear, and now I get it. It makes me want to see the movie more. Believe it or not. Yes, it does. Omar94 writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. I finally saw the original Poltergeist. After years of saying I would, but I never got to it. I have to say it was quite enjoyable. However, one thing many people have debated is who was the true director of the film, Steven Spielberg or Toby Hooper. This had me thinking about other movies where the true director is up for debate. This was very common with George P. Cosmatos. He was called the director of Rambo 2, but rumors have come saying Sylvester Stallone ghost-directed the movie. On the movie Cobra, Cosmatos was considered the director, but according to cinematographer Rick Waite, Stallone was the true director. On the movie Tombstone, Cosmatos was also considered the director, but rumors say Kurt Russell did a lot of the directing. That's true. I'm not sure what exactly happens behind the camera, but there really should be one director, or two if there's a duo, in charge and calling the shots. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Well, I completely agree with you. I think that you need a strong director. Some directors just aren't strong. You know, a director it's not an easy thing to do, especially on a larger movie. You know, you have literally 10,000 different questions and decisions you have to make a day, in moments, and you have to answer to a bunch of different people. And there's a lot of people who, quite frankly, can't hack it, and they get in over their heads. As far as Poltergeist goes, I definitely can see. I mean, Poltergeist came out within weeks of E.T., and I think Spielberg had a vested interest in it. I'm sure Spielberg allowed Toby Hooper to take the lead, but I'm sure Spielberg had a lot to say. He was a producer after all, and he was Steven Spielberg even then, post Raiders. So why wouldn't you allow someone to help? I mean, I don't know. Spielberg has always been pretty tight-lipped about it, which means he's been gracious. But I would say that, judging from the film itself, it has a lot of Spielberg in it. So there you go. That's what I would say. Phil writes in, "Hi, Rob. Greetings from Montreal. I know this will betray my age, but I felt the need to give a shout-out to the legendary composer, conductor, and musical arranger Barry Gray. Let me talk about how much I love Barry Gray. Barry Gray did all the music, well, not all, but a lot of the music for Jerry Anderson, Thunderbirds. I think he did Doppelganger, Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, Captain Scarlet, everything. I'm a huge Barry Gray fan. So you and I definitely park our shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay. At an early age, I watched Supercar, Fireball XL5, Joe 90, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, Thunderbirds, and later UFO in Space 1999. Having rewatched some of these old Jerry Anderson-produced shows, I realized how much his themes from 60 years ago are still iconic even today. Strings, brass, pounding tribal percussions, electric guitar, electronic sound effects, they had it all. I still marvel today at the mind-blowing full orchestral arrangements in the Thunderbirds March or the urgent pounding beat of the UFO opening theme. He could also do more romantic themes, as in Marina's theme from the closing titles of Stingray, or the track Fireball that even reached 32 on the UK charts in 1963. He also scored the soundtrack to 1969's Doppelganger, better known in America as Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, one of my favorite sci-fi movies as a kid. I am dumbfounded at the tendency of today's younger generation that seems to want to cancel anything in the past that they don't like or don't think is cool anymore. It's really weird. I think the opposite. I find that I embrace my past even more today. After all, we are who we are based on the sum of our lifetime of experience and influences. Why would we disown ourselves or our culture, no matter when it is from? Rediscovering Barry Gray's iconic themes has shed a bright new light on it for me and only reinforced their importance. In the end, I remember these themes, but I will forget Quibi." Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. Anyway, just some old geezers shouting out some old stuff. What else is new? Please take care, Rob, and everyone at the Post-Geek Singularity. Well, let me tell you, Phil, what a great letter that is. I'm a huge fan. You know, one of the things I'm really missing from genre films is whistleable themes. I love growing up, especially in the 80s. I mean, you think about things like dun 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 dun. I hope I did that well. Do you all recognize that? That's Back to the Future. But even the horror films, I mean, whether it was Phantasm or Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street, these were great whistleable themes. And even Poltergeist. In my head, I'm like, da na 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 na. Jerry Goldsmith Poltergeist theme. And then of course John Williams themes. I miss all that. Barry Gray wrote great themes. I mean, if you want to see examples of Barry Gray's music, especially you brought up, I mean, UFO is one of the great opening theme songs for a TV show ever. And so is the first season of Space 1999. It begins with this big orchestral thing and turns into this awesome electronic disco theme. I don't know what you call it. But the Thunderbirds theme, Captain Scarlet, Stingray, all that stuff. It was great. All that music was great. I miss it all. And I don't know, nowadays, I mean, themes might not be as necessarily cool as, say, what Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard did for the Batman movies. I mean, but I do miss my themes. I miss my themes, and I really love, like, even it's not Barry Gray, but Ron Grenier, who did the Doctor Who theme, also did the theme for The Prisoner, which is great stuff. Miss those themes. They were good stuff. But Barry Gray was rad. So thanks for writing in about that. Omar94 sends in another letter. By the way, I'm just reading these, going through, because I have so many I've missed. Hi, Rob. Your most recent rant about Star Trek got me thinking. Usually, but not always, when there is a movie or a TV show I find okay or not that good, I always say to myself after watching it, the reason I found it okay or not that good is because there was a good idea or ideas which were not executed very well, in my opinion. That seems to be the case with a number of movies I've seen. A few of Ivan Reitman's movies are like that. Twins is a really good idea, with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito as twin brothers who meet as adults after being separated at birth, but I didn't think the idea was executed well, as I found the movie to be just okay. Ghostbusters 2, which I found to be okay, had a really good idea, with negative human emotions being personified into a slime which can bring out supernatural spirits, but I didn't find it executed that well, to say the least. Kindergarten Cop was a good idea, with the hard-boiled detective story where Schwarzenegger tries to stop a criminal from getting to his ex-wife and kid, but I didn't think it was executed well since it had a very uneven tone, as there's the hard-boiled stuff and then there's the fish-out-of-water comedy about a new teacher in a new school. It felt like two different movies combined. I think the new teacher and a new school idea could have worked with the hard-boiled detective story if the movie kept the same tone throughout it all and changed it up by making the school more run-down and dreary instead of all lighthearted and happy. I found Kindergarten Cop is just average because I thought all the more serious hard-boiled stuff was really good, like the first 15 minutes and the big showdown near the end, but I found everything else, like the fish-out-of-water school stuff, to not be that good. Junior is an excellent idea for both science fiction and comedy, as you have a drug which prevents miscarriages and is experimented on with a human creating a pregnant man. However, I found the movie to be just okay, as I felt the idea was not explored enough. Lethal Weapon 3, which I did not like that much, besides the great action and chase sequences, had the making of being a really good movie. It had a brilliant idea where you have Mel Gibson and Danny Glover going up against a former cop turned rogue, as he would know his way around police procedurals and use that to his advantage. However, I felt it just wasn't executed very well because it tries being serious, like the whole thing with Danny Glover killing his son's friend, but then there's a whole ton of comedy thrown in, like that scene when Gibson interrupts a movie being shot because he thought there was a real crime happening, as well as the banter between Gibson and Glover throughout the film, and then there's Joe Pesci as Leo Getz. Also, the bad guy, Jack Travis, played by Stuart Wilson, his plan and motivation is never actually explained because his backstory is he's a dirty and brutal cop who went missing after going to get coffee. Then he became a criminal, as there's the whole arms dealing thing he does with the armor-piercing rounds, and then there's the real estate thing. I just did not get it. There's a reason why, because they were making that up as they went along. I was working at Warner Brothers at the time. Those are just some examples of why I think some movies and TV shows turn out either just okay or not that good. I don't know if that's how you see things when you watch something, but that's just me. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Believe it or not, there's a lot of movies that go into production. They have the talent involved, but they might not have the script in the right place, and they move forward anyway. Lethal Weapon is case in point. They didn't have a strong script. And I think sometimes one of the problems with movies that got made like Junior and Kindergarten Cop is they were spec scripts. You know, somebody has a great premise and they don't necessarily have a great story to go along with that premise, and everything is serving the premise instead of telling a great story. Kindergarten Cop and Junior are both movies that have good jumping off points, but again, they were written to serve the premise as opposed to having a great story. Now, I think a brilliant example of the reverse of that, a movie that has a terrific premise but also has an amazing story, is Tootsie. Sidney Pollack's Tootsie. That high-concept story, Dustin Hoffman, an actor in New York, can't get a job, so he decides to dress as a woman and pretend he's somebody else entirely, and as a woman gets a job on a TV show. That is one wacky hospital. Tootsie is one of my favorite comedies of all time, and I think it has a great story, and it really great characters and great stories, and it's a drama, it's a comedy, it's a romance. It is very deftly done, and it has a really incredible script. And what could have been a premise and not so good turns out to have a great premise, and it transcends its premise and turns out to be one of my favorite comedies of all time. So, it really depends. This one comes from Zachary King. Rob, I've been slowly making my way through a list I compiled that I affectionately call Rob Recommends. In that pursuit, I've recently finished watching the series The Prisoner, starring Patrick McGoohan, and I wanted to share my observations. I hope, Zachary, that you were watching Az and I's deep dive into The Prisoner, which we are doing tomorrow. So, yeah. The only other times I'd seen McGoohan in anything was in 1976 Silver Streak, where he portrayed the villainous Roger Devereaux, and 1979's Escape from Alcatraz, where he played the warden. I really enjoyed McGoohan's performance as number 6. I found this series to be smart and innovative, as well as sometimes bizarre and even ludicrous. A sentient weather balloon that, when needed, emerges from the ocean floor to hunt down and smother agitators, or those who attempt to escape from the village. Okay, if you say so. Come on, man, Rover rules. Though some research I discovered that they had initially thought to use a robot for the Guardian role, they did, but I assumed due to the cost or the logistics they were unable to and came up with a weather balloon as a last-minute substitute. I relished seeing number 6 trying to outsmart the ever-changing persona of number 2. My favorite episode was Many Happy Returns. We just did that episode, where we see number 6 make it all the way back to his former life, only to end up back in the village at the conclusion of the episode. Although I thought the first half of the series was really intriguing, the series fell apart for me near the end as the plots kept getting less and less believable and more bizarre. The final 2 episodes reminded me of Zardoz, which you might recall I described as a bad acid trip. For anyone interested, I watched the series for free via Tubi TV. They also have the Secret Agent series, as well as The Man in the Iron Mask, and The Hard Way if you want to see more of McGoohan. Anyways, Rob, that's all I have for now. Be seeing you. Zachary King. Well, I don't know where it went. I was going to say, where did Zardoz went somewhere? I'm missing. Whenever somebody mentions Zardoz, I have to get my Zardoz floating head. I don't know where it went. I've got so much going on in here. I'm moving stuff around. I got to find Zardoz. I'm very upset. But yes, I love The Prisoner. It's one of, I think, the most influential television shows ever made. I've really been enjoying every Wednesday at noon. Heel versus Babyface, who's named Az. Az and I are looking into The Prisoner. We're going through each episode, and check it out if you want. I highly recommend it. The shows are very fun that we're doing. This next one comes from Gabby D. Gabby D. Gabby D says, "Hi, I'm Gabby from Israel, Yisrael, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, and this is my first letter to you. I've recently listened to your Star Trek Lower Decks summary of your love-hate relationship with that show, and I could not escape noticing something that was in the background, metaphorically speaking, namely a hunger for good Trek from the days of yore. I've been intending to write to you and recommend 2 different fan creations, both animated, that, in my humble opinion, exemplify the capturing of the spirit of what we enjoyed from the 66 to 2005 Star Trek, and ask you if you've seen them. And perhaps if you're interested, to suggest do a segment about either one or both of these creations on your podcast so that other Trekkies out there could perhaps pick up on the Trek goodness that is out there. My first recommendation is for a trilogy of 3 feature-length movies from one Brandon Bridges. Wow. The first time I watched these movies, I was kind of thrown out of the spirit as it was intended because I viewed them in chunks when I had time instead of the movies that ultimately intertwine. Plus, I didn't understand a few things in the background that I just recently came to know through a mini-documentary about the making of these movies, namely, what was up with the seemingly too long obsession with a segment from the Price is Right game show and its real and meta connection to another topic that the creator-writer seemingly had some experience with, and that being the one true love getting away. Each movie is 3 to 4 hours in length. Really? With the unfortunate resolution being just 480p. The bad stuff, the character animation is mediocre at best. The walking animation is atrocious. The background animation is pretty good, and the starship models are decent. The dub is what I had an issue with. The guy who made these had plans for a large cast with a ton of work, and when that fell apart, he just dubbed both men and women with dudes. Wow. At least it has to be said that these guys made an effort. And more recently, I was provided with the context of, do most audiobooks sound different? The stuff I was impressed by. The villain is actually fairly well done, considering the lack of many good villains in Trek. The writing is ambitious. The dialogue is okay. It manages to avoid some of the clunkiness in many other Trek fan productions, but both the character creation and the story are memorable, with stories within stories within stories, with characters that we meet at 3 different periods in their lives through 3 long movies, and we see how they change with those time periods mirroring and overlapping each other in clever ways. Clearly, a lot of thought has gone into that, and the story takes its time to unpack, and there's no rush to the finish line a la JJ Trek and Trek movies in general. The music score also has a great deal of attention to it, drawing from a vast array of nerdy stuff, from the never-ending story to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Back to the Future, and it's used in a clever and enjoyable way to complement the story. If you're into the where do I know that from game, this is quite fun. All in all, way back when I too had given up on it at first glance, now that I've taken the time to see it, I'm quite impressed, as it managed to do in 3 movies, character personality-wise, what Trek shows usually take 3 seasons to do, TOS excluded. With a little patience and forgiveness, I hope you'll enjoy these too. Good luck with the IICFF Film Festival, and thanks for reading, Gabby. Well, you know what? I don't even know these. I don't know what you're talking about, which I cannot believe, but apparently I learn something new every day, even about Star Trek. And I'm going to put that in the chat here. I'm going to put these in order that she's giving to me. This is Part 1, Star Trek 1 Spectre. This is Star Trek 2 Retribution, which she says here, and parenthetically says, is the weakest of the bunch. So first of all, let me put that in. There's 1. There is 2. And there's Part 3, Redemption. And then Gabby finishes off by saying, hashtag, still way better than JJ. Nice to hear from anybody from Israel. I went to Israel in 2005, and I had the best time ever. I really want to go back. I can't believe I've been back in 15 years. I have a great story about Israel. I'll tell this story quickly. So, I collected for a long time. I still have a big collection of movie posters, but I used to have a huge collection of movie posters, and I loved foreign movie posters. I collected foreign movie posters, and I wanted an Israeli movie poster. And this is pre-internet. This was 1985, 84, 85, and my grandmother was going to Israel, and I said, Grandma, she asked me if I wanted anything from the Holy Land, and I said, yes, I want a movie poster that is in Israeli. I wanted an Israeli movie poster. So by the way, this is an absolutely true story. So my grandmother goes to Israel, and it's not like you can go buy movie posters. So she actually went to a movie theater in Israel. And I guess she asked the person behind the counter, she says, my grandson in America, in Seattle, would love to get a movie poster. Can I get one from you? And the person there, I don't know if it was the manager of the theater or the person who's selling you tickets or whatever, they said, yes, we'll give you a movie poster. I mean, we can't let you pick one. We can't let you just go through our stuff. But so apparently the way my grandmother told me that there was like a big pile of them, or somebody brought out a big pile of them and just randomly pulled one out And then my grandmother took it, and she didn't look at it. She didn't look at it. So she takes it home. She comes back to Seattle, and it was so funny. My grandmother goes, and I didn't look at it until just before I came here. This was at our house on Mercer Island. And I didn't look at it until I wanted to make sure that it was, I didn't want to give it to you if it wasn't something, if it wasn't a movie poster. And she goes, and I just looked at it before I came. And I said, oh, really? And she goes, I'm just going to hand it to you and you tell me. Return of the Jedi. My grandmother just managed to snag me some cosmic, tumblers came through. My grandmother rocked me a Israeli Return of the Jedi poster. Just saying. I mean, how cool is that? What can you say? God works in mysterious ways. Emma Bannon writes in. Hello, Emma. Emma is a fairly new member, I guess, of the Post-Geek Singularity, or somebody new that I've been conversing with. I very much enjoy our interactions, whether on here or on Twitter. Emma writes in and says, a long time ago. Hey, that's pretty good. Might make for an interesting start to a movie sometime. Or a song. Way back in the days when cinemas were open and you weren't taking a chance by going to one, I had a friend who was a projectionist in a cinema. Whenever they received a film, it was his job to take the reels and splice them together and run them on a screen to check it was okay to screen to the public. One day in 1999, just before the nuclear dump on the moon exploded and sent it off on 2 seasons of a memorable cult TV show, I got an excited call from him telling me he had this new film in and he just put it together. Would I like to come over to his cinema and watch it after they closed to the public? The film was The Matrix, and I had never seen anything like it before. Its star, Keanu Reeves, had done some 27 films before it, and it had a varied career of comedies such as 2 Bill and Ted movies, dramas like Dangerous Liaisons, and action movies like Point Break and, of course, Speed. Incidentally, I always thought that it was a good job that Speed wasn't set in London, as if it had been left up to London's traffic, that bus would have turned to dust in a spectacular explosion almost instantly. I knew nothing about The Matrix before I saw it, and whilst its plot was on the surface typical sci-fi fare, although I actually think it went way deeper than this, kind of like a Matrix, if you will, and enjoyable, it was the visuals that drew me in. The cinematography by Bill Pope, which surprisingly, in my opinion, wasn't Oscar nominated, and the special effects, which did win an Oscar, gave the film its unique look, and the fight sequences helped create some of the most memorable set pieces I've ever seen on the big screen. The rescue of Morpheus and the final fight chase between Agent Smith and Neo particularly spring to mind. I know that for those versed in manga and anime and films like Hard Boiled, they could see the influences, but for me at the time, it was all wonderfully new. In terms of character arcs, there perhaps weren't many surprises. Even when Cypher chose his path, I knew that this was not going to end well, but to me it didn't matter. I love a film that draws you into its world, whatever that world is, envelops you in it, and keeps you there. For me, The Matrix did that, and it's a film that I can watch again and again, and even some 21 years on, and with the progression in storytelling and special effects, it still entertains me. It's one of those films where you don't really feel the need for a director's cut or special edition, certainly not, and certainly not one that should be remade. The sequels were something of a disappointment, at least at the time. I remember that they came out close to the Lord of the Rings films, and I found that the Matrix films were to service the special effects, whereas in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the special effects merely allowed the story to be told in the way that it needed to be. However, much like fine wine, I think time has been kind to Reloaded and Revolutions. I agree with you 100%. And whilst, yes, they can be watched as great action movies, it's really delving into the allegory of the story arc that allows a deeper appreciation of what the Wachowskis were trying to achieve. There are elements of Buddhism, Christianity, and the philosophy of Plato if the viewer wants to look deeper. And, of course, the recent statement by Lily Wachowski that the films can be interpreted to have a special meaning for transgendered people. This is absolutely true. I can't tell you how annoying it is that every time I go to the grocery store, I either have to kung fu fight an agent or swing from a police helicopter away from an exploding building. It plays havoc with the milk and the eggs. But to be serious, I don't think that these are essential to enjoy the movies. Like any great art form, be it a film or a book or music, they can be enjoyed and appreciated on a number of levels. I'm cautiously looking forward to the 4th film in the series, and seeing how they move the story forward and whether it's even a story that needs to be told. Although, to be honest, I miss the cinema so much. If someone told me they were releasing an adaptation of Roger's Thesaurus starring Steven Seagal and directed by Uwe Boll, I'd be there on opening day. Oh, please, no. No, Emma. Let me save you from that. I can't even believe you thought of something so horrifying. I love your imagination. Take care, Rob, and thanks to you and every one of the Post-Geek Singularity for the discussions and the entertainment. Much needed and always appreciated. Well, Emma, you and I obviously park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay, and I love, although I gotta say, as much as I love interacting with you, some of the jokes that you tell, you should be ashamed. I'm just saying. Sometimes you need to rethink your life choices. Some of those jokes, woo, yeah. Anyway, but thanks for that letter. To be honest, I think The Matrix was so groundbreaking that we expected to have that same experience. And look, I will say that certainly while The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions might have been disappointing, especially at the time, they certainly didn't lack ambition or scope. And I don't know if they told the stories we wanted to hear told, but they were certainly fascinating examples of filmmaking. And there was a lot of really cool stuff going on. I think you're right. Now that you don't have expectations of what you expect to get from those sequels, going back and looking at them now, they're interesting. And especially Revolutions. I really do. Reloaded. Rise Williams writes in, "Hey, Rob and fellow genre connoisseurs in the Post-Geek Singularity. It's my first time writing to you. And I love your show and when you're on the John Campy show." Well, Rise, I thank you for that. Thanks for writing in. Rob, like you feel about Star Trek is what I feel the same about Doctor Who. And it's going right now. It's lost its science fiction escapism, and now it's all about bringing in real-life social politics. Not that I'm against that in any way. I just don't feel I need it. I already have my own politics built into it. Already has its own politics built into the lore, and I feel like I'm losing the show I loved when I was younger. I was in such awe when I first started watching it, with David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. He made me believe the whole Whoniverse and the future incarnation that came after. The current iteration with Jodie Whittaker, I feel like with her, that I cannot connect with her, and the stories with her aren't that intriguing to me, and they're not pulling me in. The recent series 12, the main showrunner writing, it's unbelievably weak and completely changed the whole lore of 57 years of Doctor Who, which made no sense and hasn't gone down great with the fans, and it makes me feel so angry, like many Star Wars fans were like with The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I hope you take the time to read this letter on your show. Big fan, Rise from Swansea, is it Swansea? I know I'm going to get it wrong. Swansea, Wales, and proud member of the Genre Connoisseurs and Post-Geek Singularity. Well, Rise, thank you for writing in. Growing up on a steady diet of Twilight Zone and the original Star Trek, all of these shows had messages, and I guess you could also say that they were full of social justice messaging and all of that. And I believe in social justice. I do. I do believe in fighting for the rights of people. I believe in fighting for the rights of all human beings and the sovereign rights of every individual to be who they are. I believe in all of that, and I think a lot of the great stories are about that very thing. However, they're also great stories, and those agendas are baked into whatever the story is, and that's what makes them great stories. But nowadays, we're losing the great stories, and we're getting stories that are agenda based, which I find annoying. Remember the Burnett axioms of never put your agenda before your characters or your story. Never put your universe before your characters or your story. And a lot of people are doing that because you will fail. And I feel like that just shows a lack of sophistication and a lack of writing ability. I mean, you go back and you watch what Rod Serling and Richard Matheson or Charles Beaumont or any of George Clayton Johnson, any of the writers for the original Twilight Zone, they were able to address a lot of these issues in 22 minutes. and tell you an incredible story, they'd have to set up a premise, set up characters, and tell you that story in 22 minutes. I know. The fourth season of the original Twilight Zone was an hour long. I get it. But nobody liked that season anyway. I mean, I liked On Thursday We Leave for Home. But, I mean, the storytelling, I mean, I have a feeling, I feel like people have lost their way. We've missed out on the great storytellers. And I think I have sort of a theory. I keep asking myself, like, why has it come down to this? You know? And I think the reason being is that most Americans, you know, when the Twilight Zone was written in classic Star Trek, a lot of those people had fought in World War II. Roddenberry was a pilot. He was a cop, a speechwriter for the chief of police. And he also survived plane crashes in World War II. You know, he was a guy that lived his life. And I think when you go through these things, you learn about life, you learn about yourself. And I think one of the problems that our civilization has now, especially I think the modern days, is everybody is looking for meaning. We're looking for satisfaction because life in itself is not satisfying the way we want it to be. You know, just existing is not satisfying. Everybody wants to feel like they've accomplished something or they've done something that they feel good about. And I think a lot of the ideas for social justice now, I mean, people are looking to feel something. They want to feel like they matter. So people are taking up causes like they always have. But nowadays, with all this input coming in, it's so fleeting. Feeling anything is fleeting. And people have always asked me, over the years, a question I get a lot is, oh, how come you like things so much? People are always asking me that. How come I like things? How come things excite me so much? Why do I enjoy these things? Because everybody's looking to feel that fulfillment for themselves. And I'm like, look, I tell people that I don't have children of my own. So I never got to feel, I never understood, or I have not felt the satisfaction of watching your children grow up and interacting with them. And that perhaps might be the great tragedy of my life, is that because I love kids. I am a kid. But, you know, people want, like, I don't know why I like things so much. I don't know why things have continued to delight me, and I still like the same stuff that I liked when I was a kid. But, maybe because it's all a conduit into my imagination, and none of that's gone away, and everything I've liked has just continued on and become better. But I think a lot of people now are looking not for meaning, but they're looking to feel something. They're looking to really connect with things. And I think our civilization now, with social media and all of that, has given us these images. Like, we can now make images of ourselves that are lies. Like, you put up the prop, you go to Instagram, you put up a picture of yourself, you know, you get the selfie, you get the exact angle you want, and then what do? You alter it to make it look better. It's not even you anymore. It's a copy of you. It's a facsimile of you that looks like you but better. And then when you go back and you look at those pictures, you wonder, well, why aren't I leading the life that? Why aren't I the person in this picture of myself? You know, and I think that people are looking for fulfillment. And nowadays, when there's an element of, you can go out and march, you know, you get caught up in the fervor of marching for a cause. You feel something. You're feeling the emotion of it. You're feeling the energy of other people, and you know that what you're doing is right. And that's a way to get fulfillment. You're helping other people. I mean, I would argue that that's true, but you're also helping yourself, because you want to feel that buzz. You want to feel, and that's something that you have to ultimately create for yourself. You know, I like things because I've always liked them for their own sake, for no other reason than I like them. You know, they delight me. And you can't teach that, and you can't really explain it. It's something that you have to experience on your own. And I think what's frustrating is now the people that are creating these franchises that we know and love, are trying to inject these franchises with things that they want people to feel. You know, they want to address issues of injustice, and they want to address issues of inclusion, and I think their intentions are good. But again, putting your agenda before your characters and your story never works. And I think that's the problem with so much storytelling now, is that people are trying to make not just themselves, but make their audiences feel something. But I think that's what a story does. A great story will inherently make you feel something if it's a great story that's well told. If the story has truth, objective truth in it. If the story is an objectively good story. Now, I think when you skew a story with agendas, I find it so interesting that both Doctor Who and Star Trek are suffering from the same problem. You have these creators that want to go back and fundamentally change the past of what these things are because they don't respect that past. Star Trek is something that I've seen my whole life. People look back at the original series and they're constantly, if you hear it, I've heard it, you've heard it a million times. Oh, it's cheesy, or the effects aren't good, or everything looks like cardboard or styrofoam. It's all, they're not looking at Star Trek. They can't. They're incapable of looking at it for its own sake. They're enjoying it, as I explained from the other day, from the outside. They're on the outside. They're not inside the show. They're always looking at it from their perspective, and they're looking at it from this hipper-than-thou position where things are charming or quaint or corny or whatever. You know, they only see when the red shirts come on screen, everybody giggles knowingly. I mean, there's nothing worse than that kind of an audience. I want to just punch people in the face. When, yes, everyone has that knowing pop culture, that sort of it's given knowledge. They don't really. They understand. They've gleaned that from pop culture. Oh, there's a red shirt. Oh, there's a tribble. That's what I feel is modern Star Trek in a nutshell. And Doctor Who, it's the same thing. You know, let's make the female Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, who, by the way, is a great actress, but, you know, why not give her stories that it doesn't matter whether she's a male or a female, but give, you know, the fact that she is female, how does that affect the way the Doctor is? His thought process. Now, it's her thought process. How does a woman think differently? Men and women are different. We're not the same. I think, you know, women are more pragmatic than men are. Because why? It goes all the way back to the fact that women have to birth children. So I think women are genetically, they have evolved to think more practically. Like, okay, well, where are we sleeping tonight? How are we going to get there? What are we going to eat? You know, men are like, I have to write this epic poem. Because okay, it's great that you're writing that epic poem, but yeah, our kids need a roof over their heads tonight, and there's predators out there. Yes, but I'm writing Gilgamesh, and it's different. So how do you write those stories? And I don't think they're doing a good job. I think both Star Trek and Doctor Who, and actually Star Wars, there are these franchises that people are, on one hand, you're pressured you want to make money. Everybody wants to make money. But the stories that they're writing are all too self-conscious. You know, like, look, I'll tell you this. I will watch Star Trek Discovery Season 3, but I watched that opening scene with the space battle. I'm like, I've never seen something more generic. It could have been, when I was watching this, I'm like, this could be in any science fiction show ever. And you're watching it, and, there's a lot of fat. It's just... like, what is this? Why am I watching this? I didn't know it was Star Trek. You know, if you go back and you watch Star Trek The Next Generation, you know you're watching Star Trek The Next Generation from the first image that pops on screen. You know what it is. Star Trek Discovery, not necessarily. And I think that's very interesting, very telling. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm babbling on. But I want to thank you for writing this letter. It's good. This one comes from Eric Gant. Hello, Eric. Greetings, Rob. I'm sure that nearly every member of the Post-Geek Singularity is familiar with AMC's hit series, The Walking Dead. Hell, the show has gotten so huge with normies, I wouldn't be surprised if it's more popular with them than it is with stereotypical genre fans. Mention Rick Grimes, Glenn, Negan, Lucille at any water cooler, and odds are most people will know what you're talking about. The series is a cultural phenomenon. I'd wager that many of its normie fans are even aware of the fact that it's based on a comic series by the same name, written by Robert Kirkman. Personally, I don't like the show. Its relentless bleakness and brutality is exactly what I don't look for when it comes to escapist entertainment. The same goes for the comic series. Like most comic readers, I followed it when it first came out, but once I realized that it was more focused on studying how ugly humanity could become if society broke down than on explaining how the zombie apocalypse started and how it could be ended, I tapped out. But I'm not here to hate on The Walking Dead. Instead, I'm here to gush about one of Kirkman's lesser-known, but in my opinion far superior comic book series, Invincible. Invincible was a monthly series published by Image Comics that ran from 2003 to 2017, and during its 14-year run, the series immersed readers in a universe that intentionally took more than a few cues from the superhero stories of Image's big brothers, Marvel and DC. The series is replete with analogs of characters and institutions from those companies. Instead of the Justice League or the Avengers, we have the Guardians of the Globe. Instead of Batman, we have Darkwing. Instead of Wonder Woman, we have War Woman. Forget about the Flash, Invincible has Red Rush. Instead of Martian Manhunter, there's Martian Man. And instead of Superman, we have Omniman. Omniman is a human-looking male from a mysterious alien race called the Viltrumites. Early on, we learn that all Viltrumites have the ability beyond those of normal humans. They're super strong, super fast, can fly, and are tough enough to easily survive everything from titanic explosions to the vacuum of space. Being the most powerful being on Earth, Omni-Man has taken on the role of benevolent protector of the world. In his off time, he's known as Nolan Grayson, a mild-mannered writer and loving husband of his wife, Debbie. The couple have a teenage son named Mark, and together the three of them live a normal suburban life. Everything is idyllic, other than Nolan's periodic zooming off to avert disasters and capture criminals in his role as Omni-Man. As the series opens, Mark Grayson is nearing the end of his high school years. He loves comics, enjoys hanging out with his friends, and is susceptible to the charms of the cute girl in homeroom as you'd expect him to be. He has the same aspirations and concerns as any other high school kid, with one exception. He wonders if one day he might develop superhuman abilities like his father. Spoilers! He does. What follows is an excellently written, decade-spanning series that often feels like a combination of the life lessons and everyman drama of Spider-Man mixed with the high-flying, aspirational heroics of Superman, all filtered through the gritty, critical lens of Alan Moore's Watchmen. It is really good stuff. Spoiler, I agree. I've been a fan of superhero comics since childhood. My favorites have always been those that don't talk down to the reader, stories in which the writer takes it as a given that the reader is at least modestly intelligent and focuses on telling a great story, trusting that we'll be able to keep up. Over the years, I've read some great, smartly written stories from both Marvel and DC, stories like Alan Moore's Watchmen and Batman the Killing Joke, Chris Claremont's historic run on Uncanny X-Men, as well as Grant Morrison's New X-Men and Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men, and there's Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One at DC, as well as his Wolverine collaboration with Claremont and his work on Daredevil at Marvel. All of these are masterpieces and perfect examples of what the big two can produce when they're on their A-game. But even then, these stories have a built-in, unavoidable failing. They're stories about characters who are meant to exist forever. The companies want readers discovering Spider-Man or Superman in 2020 and to be as attached to them as readers who discovered them in the 1960s. Because of this, the characters and stories are doomed to be fundamentally static. With the exception of a few one-off stories, Peter Parker will forever be an 18 to 25-year-old guy trying to juggle everyday life with being a superhero. Tony Stark will always be the same 30-something billionaire playboy that he was when he first appeared in 1963's Tales of Suspense. Superman is eternally the incorruptible Big Blue Boy Scout, and over 80 years after his first comic appearance, Batman is still the same 30-something crime fighter that was introduced in Detective Comics. This isn't the case with Invincible, and it's one of the things I love most about the series. When we first meet Mark, he's an average high school kid living a normal high school kid's life, or at least as normal as can be expected when the kid in question is the son of his universe's version of Superman. Over the course of the series, we'll follow him as he graduates from high school, attends college, and beyond. Much, much beyond. There are no resets, no matter how trivial or how earth-shattering an event might be. Once it happens, it sticks. And our heroes are forced to deal with it for the rest of the series. And when characters die, it's for keeps. Being a monthly series, there are some self-contained one-and-done stories, but even then, each one is part of a singular story arc, and each of these story arcs is part of an even larger, overarching story arc that evolves organically. Every action has lasting consequences. This is a complete story with a clearly defined beginning, a middle, and ending. The excellent plotting and character development aren't the only things going for the series. Being an inherently visual medium, a lot of the comic series' appeals come from its art. Overall, it is a visual masterpiece, although the art is a little rough at the start. The initial artist, Cory Walker, starts the book with a style that's a little too flat and unfinished, in my opinion. He seems to favor outlines and broad strokes over detail and shading, and as a result, his panels feel more like sketches or caricatures than traditional modern comic art. Despite this, he's a genius when it comes to design. As co-creator of Invincible, he dreamed up some truly iconic costumes, and his initial depiction of the world and its characters of the series set a tone that has proven integral to the series for the entirety of its run. Starting with issue 7, artist duty is turned over to Ryan Ottley, and this is when the series hit its stride. Ottley manages to capture the heart of Walker's style and inject it with depth and realism. The result is something I consider a true "you got chocolate in my peanut butter" event. The two contrasting styles come together to form something that's greater than the sum of its parts. Ottley gives the reader a visual collision. Primary colored cartoony elements crash into gritty realism and occasional hyper-violence. It's sometimes shocking, often hypnotically beautiful, and always entrancing. In conclusion, Invincible is one of those rare instances in which world building, character development, artistic style, and good old-fashioned storytelling come together in a perfect storm of comic goodness. I honestly think that it might be one of the greatest superhero comics ever published. And for those genre fans who, for whatever reason, simply don't like reading comics, there's huge news. Amazon has produced an animated version premiering early next year, which, by the way, the trailer just dropped if you want to see it, featuring the voice acting talents of people like Mark Hamill, Zazie Beetz, J.K. Simmons, Stephen Yeun, Michael Dorn, Seth Rogen, and many others. The series promises to be something special. Please check out the trailer on YouTube. Just search Amazon Invincible trailer. Here, I'll put that if you haven't seen it. I think most people in this chat have, but in case you have not, let me put it in here. Here is the trailer for Invincible, the animated series. Thanks for taking the time to read this Comic Geeks letter. Here's hoping the upcoming series will give Invincible the mainstream attention that it deserves. Until the sun rises in the west and the great sandworms of Arrakis learn to love swimming, make mine Robservations, Eric Gant. What a great letter, Eric. Thank you for that. It reminds me. Let's see. You know what? I can't get to it, but I have my absolute editions of Invincible, but they're right behind this box here that I can't get to. But I do love Invincible, and you are correct. It is a fantastic, fantastic series. Love it, love it, love it. Let me jump over and see what you guys are saying here in the chat over here. Let's see what's here. Let's see. Unnamed Horse. Unnamed Horse says, "This is a forgive me for I have sinned question. Given I'm in my 20s and don't watch scary movies, please cut me some slack." All right, I'll cut you some slack. "In the past month, I've watched Hereditary a few times, hoping it will make me numb to scary movies and also emotionally dead inside. The Exorcist scene with the psychiatrist. Reagan is sitting up on a chair with her forearm elevated and hand in a dead fish handshake position when the bad entity in Hereditary possesses one of the main characters. A similar gesture is made. Coincidence? No, not a coincidence. I mean, Ari Aster, who made Hereditary, he knows what's up. He knows what's going on. And that was absolutely not a coincidence. I think that was absolutely homage. So you are not, you have not barked up the wrong tree, but I want to thank you for writing in about that. Anthony Luculano sends in, Anthony's been going through, he's been watching horror films for the first time. Anthony says, a little update on the horror movies I've been watching since my last Super Chat. Since my last Super Chat, I've watched Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, The Birds, Todd Browning's Dracula, James Whale's Frankenstein, Carl Freund's The Mummy, and James Whale's The Bride of Frankenstein. Like with the last bunch of movies I told you about, I watched these for the first time. I envy you, Anthony. Tonight, I'm planning on watching The Invisible Man, oh, it's so good, from 1933, and The Wolf Man from 1941. This will be my first time watching these films. Going back to The Bride of Frankenstein, I loved it so much that I instantly added it on my top 10 favorite films of all time list. I loved it that much. Well, Anthony, clearly you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay because, man, The Bride of Frankenstein is one of the classics, one of the great horror films of all time. It is fantastic. It remains fantastic. Elizabeth and I recently watched it on Whining About Movies. Definitely, as a matter of fact, I need to refile this in my Blu-ray section, or the under C for classic monsters. That's where I have this. I have this under C for classic monsters. You know, everything in my collection is alphabetized. Everything. I don't do anything like Criterion titles or directed. No, it's alphabetized by title, except this box, classic monsters, because I know what that means. Classic monsters. I got to put that back, by the way. But yes, I envy you. I love what you're doing. I think it's so cool that you're watching all these movies for the first time, and you're probably having the best time ever. I hope you are watching our Whining About Movies, because there's another movie that you need if you have not seen it, if you have not understood, and if you don't have this greatness. By the way, this Criterion Blu-ray is so absolutely gorgeous, and it's actually got a really great documentary where they talk to Robert Evans, Roman Polanski, and Mia Farrow. So check that out. Willow says, what is the main function of film festivals? Is it primarily for the lower budget indie movies to find distributors? Also, am I remembering incorrectly, or did you once tell a story about meeting a woman at a film festival who had really bad body odor and you're trying to avoid her? Well, first of all, Willow, let's answer the first question. I think the main function of film festivals is to show movies. You know, is to get your movies seen. I know as a filmmaker myself, you want your movies to be seen. And when you made an independent film, I think the best way to get them seen is to put them in front of audiences, is to play them at film festivals. Because, they obviously, the bigger festivals that are also markets, the festivals that people are looking to buy films, you have films like, festivals like, well, Toronto, obviously. There's a lot of buyers that go to Toronto because you're seeing films for the first time. Sundance, Venice. The big festivals are absolutely places. The Cannes Film Festival, where if you show a movie, you're hoping to sell it. Absolutely, 100%. You want to show the films, sell them, and get them out there. But other film festivals, like, for instance, I guess I'm not going to tip my hat. I can say this. So Tango Shalom, the film that I produced and edited that you've heard a lot about, will begin its festival run at festivals starting in February. We have specifically targeted Jewish film festivals, of which there are a lot. There are a number of Jewish film festivals around the country, and Tango Shalom will be playing at some of them. We've gotten into festivals already. And the thing is, Tango Shalom is supremely uncool. It is a very conventional movie, and I say uncool not in a bad way. It's more in a Lester Bangs Almost Famous uncool way. We've made, as I like to say, an indie. Well, they don't like me to say indie. I just say I say indie meaning lower budget, but an indie Jewish spiritual quest family dance comedy fable. People ask me what Tango Shalom is about, and that's what I tell them. Well, this movie ain't going to Sundance. Because Sundance movies, I mean, you want it to be edgy, you want it to be cool, you want it to be on the cutting edge of cinema. Tango Shalom is not that. Tango Shalom is a throwback to a different era, and there's nothing cool about it. So Tango Shalom would not do well at a festival like Sundance. It's not going to get any attention because it's so conventional in its structure and what it's going for and very traditional. That's why we decided to target Jewish film festivals. Because I think it's a place, not only will it do well, I think people will like it, and perhaps it can pick up some awards, like an editing award. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if Jewish film festivals have an editing award, but if they do, come on, I'd love to win an editing award just once. Actually, I've won editing awards before, but for that movie I would, because I worked so hard on it. But yeah, so I think film festivals are to get movies seen. They're to sell movies that don't have distributors, and they're also to get movies seen. Now, you do remember correctly, and it was actually, I grew up going to the Seattle International Film Festival, SIFF, and I believe it was the 9th, it was either the 9th or the 10th Seattle International Film Festival, and I have what's called a full series pass. Now, oh my God, full series pass holders at SIFF now. They've got they have their website, Full Serious, whatever. But when I was there, all the full series pass holders were all friends. We knew each other. We liked each other. And everybody had their seats. And they would let the full series pass holders in, and you'd sit in your favorite seat. You'd have the same seat, and everybody would sit in their seat. Well, at the time, I think it was the 10th, there was a woman, and she would come from work. I think she worked outside. She was like a gardener or something. And she was definitely, she had a type. She was a type. she smelled terrible. Like, it's like she came from work, but it was a singular. It wasn't something I'd ever smelled before. A smell I haven't smelled since, but she really smelled terrible. And how do you tell somebody like to deal with that? I don't know, but I would have to she would always want to sit close to me, and I couldn't deal, and it would really bother me, especially when it wasn't during the week and it was crowded on the weekends. But yes, you remember correctly, that was not good. It's funny you remember that. Jeff Yerke sends in a tip and says, "Hi Rob, Mrs. Yerke and I started rewatching Fringe last night. I want to get your opinion. Why are Orsi, Abrams, and Kurtzman so much better at supernatural storytelling than they are at Star Trek? Live long and prosper, the Yerk man." Well, I think that with Fringe, it was much more, I think, about plotting. I think the plot of Fringe had a central premise, and it didn't. You could follow the plot, whereas Star Trek is more of an allegorical. I mean, Fringe was telling a story of something that's going on now. Star Trek is an allegorical story that is supposed to illuminate our world today. And look, all of their shows. My whole thing about J.J. Abrams' shows is they mutate as they go along. Like when you watch Breaking Bad had it stayed kind of the same and told this great story all the way through that felt real. But the shows that I've liked that J.J. Abrams, like Lost, greatest audience portrayal ever. Alias, first season and a half was great till that super episode where SD6 was taken down, and then everything is shattered into oblivion. So, I mean, I don't know. Is there a J.J. Abrams story where what, Felicity or something, that stayed consistent? I don't know. I think Star Trek does not suit them. Look, they understand science fiction, fantasy, and horror to be a certain way. I mean, I read the Clarice pilot that Kurtzman's producing and wrote. It was just god awful. I mean, I hated it. Being a Thomas Harris acolyte and having read those books and having loved them, mostly the movies, and then I loved, Hannibal, Brian Fuller's Hannibal is one of the great TV achievements, especially in terms of horror, ever done. And when I read the Clarice pilot, I'm like, what is this? And anyway, I just don't think there's a certain level of sophistication that is required by certain things that I don't think they are capable of writing up to. I think their sensibilities are Hercules and Xena. Really, that's what I think it is. Blue Shirt Picard says, "I know someone who works in the movie distribution industry. A call came in weeks ago stating studios were going to head in the streaming direction." Yep, I know. They wanted to do that anyway. That was something that I think was going to come anyway, but ultimately, will that stop movies from Avengers Endgame and Infinity War from getting made? I hope not. I really hope not. What are you going to do? Damo Davies sends in a tip and says, "Good evening and greetings from the UK. Would you agree that Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was the best prequel George Lucas ever produced?" Yes. I love Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Love it. I think you're absolutely right. I don't know why people don't. Stubble McShave sends in a tip. Hello, Stubble. "I think the reorganizing of Disney may be financially advantageous for them. If they put lower tier MCU movies such as Ant-Man 3 exclusively on Disney Plus, it could result in an influx of several subscriptions. An increase of 10 million extra subs is a lot of juicy dough." Yeah, but even 10, if you think about it, so over the course of a year, a 10 million subs is going to, what does that equal out to? So you have 10 million people, say, each paying, I don't know, does it equal $600 or $700 million that Ant-Man could make theatrically? I don't think they're there yet. I think we need theatrical distribution. James Bond movies, $250 million James Bond movie needs to gross $1 billion. And it won't do that on streaming. It won't even come close. And I think it's important that we keep movie theaters alive. I like what Chris Rock was saying about how movie theaters, going to the movie theaters, it's a thing. It's a social ritual that we need. It's what makes life great. Damo Davies goes on and said, did you ever hear the story about the bad time George Lucas was having making Star Wars in 77, that his friend offered him back points on Close Encounters? Oh, yeah. Of the Third Kind, and vice versa in the case Star Wars flopped as Lucas feared? Yep, that is true. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas gave each other points in their movies. That is true. The Jughead 77 sent a super chat in and said, "Hi Rob, greetings from the UK to you and my US family of all colors. What is your opinion on who should, if at all, replace Chad Boseman? Love and respect from your Nigerian brother." God, that's tough, man. That's a tough question. At first, when Chad Boseman first passed away, and it's tough because I've got my own Black Panther display. I've got Killmonger, Shuri, and Black Panther, the Hot Toys figures. I need to get his father though. God, that's really hard. I don't know. I'm still torn that they should. I think maybe introduce a new character. I mean, yeah, they could replace T'Challa with a new actor. I don't know who that would be. I mean, if they did that, maybe find an unknown. Maybe find an incredibly talented black actor we haven't seen before and put him in the role so he could be new to it and he wouldn't be prejudged. Or maybe just add a new character and replace him. I don't know, man. It's tough. That is tough. I love Chad Boseman as T'Challa so much. I mean, I thought he was so good. I just liked, the thing that I like most about people are people's faces. I'm totally a face person. That's the first thing I'm always attracted to in people, all kinds of people. I love people's faces. I loved Chad Boseman's face. I loved, I don't know what it was. I just loved his face. I loved the way his mouth moved. I love his cheekbones. I loved his eyes. I just liked his face. And I liked him in Get On Up. I thought he was great. And I'm still a huge fan of his. And I don't know, man, you got to get someone with that face. Somebody that can be a diplomat and a kick-ass superhero at the same time. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. But man, I'm tough. Jughead, I don't know. My Nigerian brother, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. But I wish I did. Stubble McShave is also here and says, again, OJ and Priscilla were in their 40s. The rest of the cast of The Naked Gun were over 60. Ricardo Montalban was the oldest. Do you think a movie with such an old cast could be made today? The reason those movies are good is that they had gags and an interesting story. Well, I would hope so, because the movie that I'm working on today, all of the principal cast members are in their 60s. The movie that I want to make. So yeah, I believe that. It just depends what kind of a movie you're making. I mean, I really don't think that if you have a good movie, I don't think many people necessarily are going to care how old the protagonists are if the story's interesting. I think you just have to make the story interesting, because once the story gets going, once you like characters, people love The Shawshank Redemption, and there's not a lot of Gil Bellows' character is young, but he plays young. Everybody else is older, and people love that movie. So yeah. S Beam is here. Hello, sir. Hey, Rob. Hope you're having a good day. One movie from my childhood was Iceman in 1984. Timothy Hutton discovers a man frozen in the ice. Do you recall this movie? I do. I saw it in the theater. I first saw it in an RCA CED video disc, along with An American Werewolf in London and Bambi. Laugh out loud. Thoughts? Man, I saw Iceman once. When I saw it in the theater. I thought it was interesting. It was cool. I liked the idea behind it. I don't remember anything about it, though. I need to see that again. As you know, I had an RCA CED player, capacitance electronic disc. And the only reason I got one was because the only way to get on Her Majesty's Secret Service at the time was to have it on RCA CED disc. So, yeah. Uh-oh. Mark Chure is here. Our resident, the official toxic fan of the Burnettwork channel. Mark C says, for those of you who are huge fans of Terry Pratchett's Discworld, I'm sorry, and welcome to the fandom menace. Oh, no. What happened? What happened? Uh-oh. 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 Is there something that dropped? Is there news? Let's see if there's news. How they 2 hours ago. Uh-oh. Oh, I haven't seen this trailer. Oh, no. I haven't seen that trailer yet. Oh, my God. I didn't realize it dropped. Yeesh. What kind of changes did they make, Mark? I'm scared. Chuck Philpott is here. Chuck. You honor me, sir. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate that. My work schedule is crazy for October. I haven't been able to support the channel like I want to. Don't get to watch the live streams that much. Keep up the great work, Rob. Still a major part of my day. Well, Chuck, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Very nice of you to do that. I very much appreciate it. And by the way, why can't you watch the live streams? No, I'm just kidding. You know, that's why they're put away on YouTube for all posterity, you know, for everybody to see. So I'm glad. But thanks for enjoying the channel, and thanks for participating the way you have. Kinky Sphincter. I love that name. Will you be doing a physical media collection video this year? I loved your previous ones. Can't wait for the Zavvi 4K Joker set. Yeah, you know, I can't wait for the... I didn't order that Zavvi Joker set. I should have. They've got good stuff. I mean, I was happy because I got the Flash Gordon box set from them. It was the first time I ordered from a Studio Canal disc, and it came fine. People said sometimes their stuff comes smashed. It wasn't bad for me. You know what I should? Now that all my physical media collection, I've basically have an L-shaped wall. I might do that. I think I'm gonna start doing. I keep saying I'm gonna do that, but look, the next 2.5 months, I don't know, to be honest, what we're gonna talk about. With this movie news, we can report on the news and topics at hand, but I'm gonna have to do a lot. I think I'm gonna have to do like some 10-minute chunks of like the Robservatory stuff. What's in the Robservatory? And I keep changing. Like, I got to tell you, almost everything I own now has been slowly moving into the Robservatory. It's kind of an explosion of. That's why I was finally, once again, I'm very proud of this shelf. So I would like to do like, okay, here's my, and I'll just do close-ups of everything and do more arrangements of things. But it would be fun. Like, I could literally pan across my entire physical media collection, and because it really hasn't all been alphabetized in that way. And I think I'll just start doing that kind of stuff, and people can see like, here's my collection of physical media. Make of it what you will. But I think that's something that would be fun to do. And you're right. What Kinky is, when I first started this channel, I didn't know what it really was. And one of the things I was doing was I was going alphabetizing and picking like 10 movies from my physical media collection that I liked and just saying, watch these movies. And I stopped at like G. It would be funny to start that series again. Because why not? It would be fun. So, yeah. I should do that. Yeah. Let's see. Where are Atticatch? Hello, Atticatch 103. This is long. Let me read this all. Hey, Mr. B. Any movie that is mandatory for you to usher in the Halloween season? For me, it's 1957's Night of the Demon or Curse of the Demon in the U.S. Good movie. Not the scariest, but something about it puts me in the mood. Maybe it's the opening monologue in a deep, sinister tone. It has been written since the beginning of time, even unto these ancient stones, that evil supernatural creatures exist in a world of darkness. And it is also said, man, using the magic power of the ancient runic symbols, can call forth these powers of darkness. The demons of hell. Oh, there you go. I think that Night of the Demon is a good movie to start out the Halloween season with. There's so many different Halloween movies. Look, we watched Unwinding About Movies, Mario Bava's Black Sunday. That's a pretty damn Halloween movie to me. A lot of Halloween. But I have to say, you know what? As far as a new movie that I think is a bona fide, straight up Halloween classic, The Autopsy of Jane Doe. The Autopsy of Jane Doe is right up there. And but in terms of you know, it depends. It really depends. Like, as much as I like things like The Exorcist and Dawn of the Dead, I don't think of those as being Halloween movies. Whereas, because of the trappings of Halloween, I like old school trappings of Halloween, but I think Mario Bava's Black Sunday is definitely one of them. And, you know, black and white movies, Bride of Frankenstein to me is very Halloween-y. So, yeah. Jason Bueno says, Rob, I think the stagecraft screen tech for The Mandalorian is going to be used more and more in productions. Oh, yes, especially since Disney's announcement. Well, it's a great way to do it. Yeah, it's the great way to do it. I think the technology is great. I mean, I'm going to miss seeing a lot of location filming done, but yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to see that a lot. It's incredible technology, and it makes shooting a lot cheaper doing certain things. Nathan Taylor sends in a super chat and says, "What are some of your favorite Van Halen songs?" Am I a Van Halen fan? Well, I love Van Halen, but I wouldn't consider myself like an uber fan. You know, I think the two Van Halen songs that from my youth, "Running with the Devil," and girl, you really got me now. You got me, so I don't know where. Those two songs. I mean, to me, that is Van Halen. You know, those two songs, and then Jamie's Crying and Jump, and but these are all like, everyone knows these songs. You know, so I'm not a deep cut Van Halen guy. Not like Prince, and then of course. Hot for Teacher and Panama, ain't talking about love. You know, these are things that I mean, I grew up with them, and especially I think Hot for Teacher. I love that song because of the video. That was one of the first songs that I really loved because I love the video so much. Got it made. Yes. So, I mean, I don't, you can't have grown up in the late 70s and 80s and not like Van Halen. And look, I like Sammy Hagar, but I am a David Lee Roth fan. I'm all about, not Van Hagar, but David Lee Roth. Not that I don't like Sammy Hagar taking over. He did a fine job. But, you know, I really do think that, to me, Van Halen is David Lee Roth. So, yeah. What can I say? Well, that's what I can say, I guess. That's what I can say. I got a letter that Omar94 wrote in, and I don't know why he wrote this letter. Omar, bruh, can't go with you here. Omar writes, "Hi, Rob. Since this is the month of Halloween, a lot of movies that have to do with the theme of Halloween, like supernatural elements, ghosts, goblins, and whatever, are being shown on TV, especially on Freeform. But there's one movie in particular I wanted to discuss and defend to a certain extent. I know you hate the movie, but I actually do not think Ghostbusters 2 is bad. I actually find the movie to be just okay. There are definitely problems with the film. The humor in this movie is more kid-friendly as opposed to the first film, which was more adult. Well, therein lies my problem with it. The story takes a little while before we figure out what the movie's about. Ernie Hudson was sidelined once again. Another problem with the film I don't like. I loved Ernie Hudson. I've seen shit that'll turn you white. And that was a great line. How can you not have Ernie Hudson? He was like the straight man. Finally, there is not much ghost busting in the movie. The only times that happen are in the courtroom with the Scoleri brothers, a montage of the team operating afterwards, and then the big showdown with the Statue of Liberty in the battle at the museum. Overall, I thought Ghostbusters 2 was just okay. It's nowhere near as good as the first film, but it's watchable and certainly not as bad as some have said it is. Maybe not. You know what? I think I've watched it. I watched it in the theater. I didn't like it. I've watched it a couple times on TV. cable. I think I might even own it, but I've never watched the disc. So, William La Rochelle is here. Oh. Uh-oh. Okay, everybody, strap in. William La Rochelle is here. Let's get political. Anyway. Hi, Rob. Just as Adele got flack on Twitter for losing weight, and those posting supportive comments were demonized by twit activists, now Rebel Wilson is also apparently getting the same remarks, having lost weight herself. It may prove to be the Jennifer Grey nose principle and could hurt her career as a dancing bear act, fat person fall down, haha. But it is a tremendous gift to herself and her health and well-being. By the way, Rebel Wilson, looking pretty tasty, I must say. Can I say that? Do I get canceled if I say that? Perhaps I should rephrase. Rebel Wilson, I think, is looking really hot these days. So, anyway. The topic is, but you know what? It's probably creepy for me being as old as I am saying that about her, who's quite younger. But I would say this. I would say, in all honesty, she's obviously worked very hard, and I think she looks fantastic. So, kudos to Rebel Wilson. But the idea, look, we live in a crazy situation, a crazy society. And, if you go back to science a little bit, I'm not the healthiest dude in the world. I could stand to lose a good 50 pounds. I mean, I've lost 50 pounds like before, and it requires diligence, and it requires exercise. And I'll tell you right away, I mean, I look damn good if I were to lose 50 pounds. I get pretty muscular. I look pretty good. But I like to drink, and I like to eat. And if you're going to lose that weight, you can't do those things as much. You can't really drink unless you're only drinking like vodka and soda. But yeah, the idea, I don't understand. The human body has an optimal form in which it works correctly. And coincidentally, that's also when you're healthiest, usually. So to me, it's a health issue. A health issue, number one. So the fact that Adele or Rebel Wilson is shamed by anyone because they get in shape, they get into the way that the human body is supposed to be, that where it functions the best, is insane. This topic is what I think of when the whole safe space culture comes up. The sensibility where people demand to be told what they want to hear, and where the entire society is expected to be the polite husband who may be disingenuous each time he hears the dreaded question, does this dress make me look fat? A Twitter troll may whine that Rebel is pandering to the male gaze, while I might say she is incidentally becoming photogenic for an industry where the camera can only help so much. What gets overlooked is something I know about as someone who has fought with my weight for years. Being overweight is not a good thing. Those are in all caps. It can mean type 2 diabetes and gout and a handful of pills every day which impair concentration. Every doctor I've had, from general practitioners to specialists across the board, encourage weight loss and paint a picture of less medication and fewer aches and pains once the fat is reduced. This is true, and it's academic. Even to the point of encouraging bariatric surgery, I took steps toward that, but backed off. It is cause for celebration when someone sheds weight and looks healthier. Agreed. When I consider the safe space ideology starting around 2012, as well as fourth wave feminism and the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney, I wonder if the Mayan apocalypse actually did happen, but just in a form we did not expect. I feel like I have to preface almost any statement about pop culture with a verbose distinction between politics and respect for the truth. I mean, to be branded a truther may throw shade on a point being made. I have to spoon feed that I don't like Ontario Premier Doug Ford, or Donald Trump and his cronies, and I make a distinction between constructive leaders like AOC, Bernie, or even Greta Thunberg, and the posers I call SJWs. Unfortunately, some communities on social media don't have that line in the sand and will say, hey, post no political stuff, but meanwhile, enjoy my derogatory meme about Greta. Meanwhile, on the extreme left, there's a page I visit run by a successful screenwriter and sci-fi showrunner who will a moderator to post hot takes. Maybe you will be, or will a moderator to post hot takes against J.K. Rowling and then crack down on those of us who may defend her. I posted a link to a Google Drive post I had composed so I would not have to repeat my own points about the controversies over that and the most recent hype for another open letter taking the other side. Walking on eggshells because a reasoned argument is thought to be harmful to presumed fragile minds does not seem reason, especially in a community of writers. If I start a Facebook page, I might want to state up front, this is not a safe space. But the other shoe that will drop is Facebook itself maybe deleting it. I could not get them to delete a viral video showing a real decapitation, but words, maybe not from a group that is at issue, but from a would-be white knight busybody, can get something pulled immediately. It may be enough that someone portrays expression of a minority view as the enemy or the political opponent, and that has consequences. It is entirely possible that overreach from the left caused people to lean toward Trump. The bubble bursts, the very bubble people want to fill with what they consider like-minded folks. Most of my Facebook enemies may be people with whom I share 99% of the same views, and in that case, it should make me seem like an ally. I care about the environment. I'm agitated by those not wearing pandemic masks on the subway. I've never been against marriage equality, but I did not like the 2016 remake of Ghostbusters, and I do like Mel Gibson and will see Fat Man immediately. Julie Taymor, Jennifer Kent, Anna Lily Amanpour and Jodie Foster, Jane Campion, and Ruben Nada are directors I follow who actually direct, but I also roll my eyes when someone prattles on about the male gaze in photography. Even when Sam Taylor Johnson made a $100 million hit with 50 Shades of Grey, and with a female novelist having considerable say over their movie, was slammed for the male gaze. And in the same article, Mad Max Fury Road is praised for not having that, despite the fact that it is the product of the 70-year-old white male gaze of George Miller. And if you like Imperator Furiosa, thank Miller because she is his baby. There's no end to the nonsensical, transitory issues that can drive a wedge. Doomcock is often criticized in a few letters, but I respect him. He is a fine singer, an impressionist, and I like his regular voice in live streams, even though live streams themselves are too long to download even after the files have been archived. I may not share a lot of Doomcock videos because people won't get past the gimmick, but I say he has many valid points, and whether or not his predictions pan out, the vital aspect of his reports is that it represents a segment of the potential viewership who feel disenfranchised and resent the clumsy way certain IPs have been handled. I totally agree. I don't yet know whether the owners of these franchises pay attention, despite J.J. Abrams name-dropping the fandom menace at one point. I make a distinction between Doomcock the show-tune singing performer and some of his right-wing fans on the Doomcock Army Facebook page, who I would expect to look askance at his fondness for old standards. I hope those thoughts feel like they all belong in the same letter. They absolutely do. Sorry for the length. All the best to yourself and the PGS. William. Well, William, I gotta say, fantastic letter. Very much enjoyed this letter. Look, I don't understand where we have got to in our culture. I don't understand. Like, I will talk to anybody about anything. And I am criticized if I go on to Midnight's Edge, or if I'm on a stream with Doomcock or Gary Beekler or Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers. I have to tell you something, and I've said this before and I will say it again. I have been treated very well by those people. They have been nothing but courteous. And every time I say that, like I just did, somebody will write in and say to me, inevitably they will say, well, the only reason why they want you on their channels is because you give them credibility and they like having you because you work in the industry. I don't have as many subscribers as they do. You know, you look at Gary Beekler or you look at Doomcock, you look at Midnight's Edge. They have a lot more subscribers. I am not some million subscriber guy that's bringing that to their channel. And if they do like my knowledge of the industry and that I've been in the industry, they like it because that's my opinion. They value my opinion, certainly not my subscription base. And I've always liked to talk to different people. I do not understand why we live in a world where people vilify those who have opinions, as if opinions somehow hurt. Now, there are people out there that have opinions that I think are dangerous, but I'll even listen to somebody like, I'll watch Joe Rogan, I'll watch Dave Rubin, I'll watch Ben Shapiro even. Do I agree with Ben Shapiro's politics all the time? No, but he's not dumb. And so listening to Ben Shapiro, I find things that are interesting, really interesting stuff. And whether I agree with him or not, it helps me define what it is that I believe. I don't understand why, especially like in college, why do we listen to people that, or why can't we listen to people we don't agree with? And on college campuses, one of the things I liked about college is I saw lots of speakers I didn't agree with. But when you're confronted with ideas that you don't agree with, or speakers that you fundamentally oppose, but when you listen to them speak, you can define what it is you really do believe. Because, I think a lot of the time, people don't really understand what they believe. And the only way to really start to really understand and honestly know what it is you believe is to put your ideas of right and wrong or good and bad or social justice or whatever up against opposing points of view and understand how to interact with those opposing points of view. That's democracy. That's at the very basis. And now we've become so tribal, we've forgotten to how to talk to one another. I have to tell you, there's a guy who I didn't know, a black, what would you call him? He's a social theorist. He's an economist. His name is Thomas. Let me get this right. Thomas Sowell. He's 90 years old now. 90 years old. And I sort of went down a Thomas Sowell rabbit hole. He's considered a black conservative, but man, if I don't like listening to his views. Now, does that make me, Elizabeth would say things like, are you turning into a Republican? And I'm like, no, but I do like people who are clear thinkers. And a lot of the time he was ostracized from his own community, from the black community, because his ideals flew in the face of these things. But he's written a ton of books, and I've been going and listening. And by the way, there's so much interesting video on him because he's 90 years old. He's lived through so many different periods of the last century of history. And he's a guy that, do I always agree with what he has to say? No. But the man is wicked smart, and he's worth listening to. And so I think in the fan community, look, there's a lot of people that are disrespectful to one another. Hell, there's a lot of people that show me an amazing amount of disrespect online because of my views of Star Trek or whatever. People that think that me having this film festival for all of us is somehow a scam. And I resent that because, honestly, the whole point of having this film festival, my one motivation for it is, look, it's not like, I'm not like using it to exploit my brand or something. I just thought it would be fun to do because Dieter Bastian and Patrick Keller made a movie. I'm like, we should have a film festival. And now we are. That's how I've led my life. Let's do this. Because wouldn't it be cool if we did? Story of my life. That's all I've ever wanted to do. And I've had to deal with people that don't like that. Let's wouldn't you rather have done something than not do it? Let's do something cool. Hey, this film festival, it'll be what it is. And after January 1st, when we give out the awards, I'll be like, look what we did for the last 3 months. We had a film festival, and now we've got the results of that film festival. All of you people from all over the world, everybody got off their asses and made something cool. And I think, like I say to people, Doomcock, it's a performance. And yeah, at the end of the day, all he's really saying is he harsh? Sure. But you know what? So's the universe. The universe is indifferent to your suffering. I watched a video that was taken of a black hole eating a star. And they had this term that I'd never heard, like it was spaghettified or something like this. Something that happens when a black hole eats a star. Eats a star! And I'm like, we're arguing over whether Doomcock or the Fandom Menace or all these people are... I'm like, let's just be happy we're not in that star system because we wouldn't be here to argue over any of this stuff. All of this is such a privilege. And I think that the fact that we're arguing over movies and cinema and music and pop culture and all that, it's just It's just silly. And politics, and I hate you and you hate me. For what reason? Why do we hate each other? Why can't we have spirited debate? Why can't we have, it's a skill. We're all infantilized because we're all like, if you think that hearing an idea is somehow dangerous. Now, there are ideas if they propagate and turn into like Nazism. Look, I think Marxism is dangerous. Why do I think that? Because of the entire 20th century. Show me a Marxist civilization that worked. There ain't any. And when I hear people, especially young people that don't even know what Marxism is, they just hear like, have you read Das Kapital? I mean, what's up? It's crazy to me. I think the free flow and the free exchange of ideas in a calm environment. I mean, look up William F. Buckley videos from like 30 or 40 years ago. Look at the conversations they had. They were smart people. I just feel like we've devolved. And we should be able to talk about anything without people getting angry. I think having safe spaces where people are free of ideas that are uncomfortable is the most insane thing ever. Because the universe is indifferent to your suffering. And the last thing you should fear is By the way, you know what? Everybody, Thomas Sowell. Just go to YouTube. Thomas Sowell. Watch a few of his videos. Or they're not usually videos he made. They're interviews he's doing with other people. THOMAS, Thomas Sowell, SOWELL. And check it out. He went to Howard University, University of Chicago, Columbia University, and Harvard. And he went to Stuyvesant High School. And just look at his videos. He's a conservative, somebody that I shouldn't necessarily be the biggest fan of. This is a recent thing. Like this week, I've stumbled across him, and I can't get enough of watching his videos. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think of him. Yeah. This comes from Glambot. Salut, Rob. I am sending this message via the excellent, luxurious bandwidth mind communication known in this particular galaxy as the interwebs. I have personally been watching you over these years on various media platforms, and I would like to say I was one of the many who originally subscribed to your channel upon launch. Thanks to Giovanni Campia and John Schnepp. I just never comment. Now that I have name-dropped my reason for being here, I have a question about a certain program that has just finished its first season run on HBO. Raised by Wolves. Dun, dun, dun. So, I have a girlfriend, and she is the type who doesn't typically enjoy entering the world of sci-fi fantasy in her TV and movie consumption. This being said, I managed to convince her to give it a go. And guess what? She loved it. Until the last episode. Spoilers. When Mother... I don't know if I should read this. I haven't seen this last episode, so... You know what? I'm going to spoil it for myself. I've only seen the first episode. But until the last episode, spoilers, when Mother gives birth to a giant flying space snake. And she turns to me and she says, "What the fuck? I watched this series all the way to see this? I feel like I will have another hard time convincing my partner to ever watch another sci-fi series again." So my question is, Rob, do you think that the ending of the first season of Raised by Wolves was good sci-fi, or just another boring, predictable conclusion to another sci-fi story which had a great premise without a great end? Cheers, Glambot from Canada. Well, Glambot, I've only watched the first episode, so I can't speak to that, but I will watch it. But now I know what happens. I'm going to tell you something. I read a short story once, and I believe, let me look it up. I believe it was called Piecework. Piecework. Let me see. Hang on. And WRK, Piecework. Story. Yes, it's by David Brin. Piecework. Let's see if I can give you if somebody has fantasticfiction.com. Okay. Piecework by David Brin. Okay, this is great. I love this short story. This short story left such an impression on me. The most sophisticated engineering process on Earth is pregnancy among mammals, especially among humans. There is already talk of using goats and cattle to produce industrial products instead of milk, and possibly bringing to term organic machines, programmed in eggs to develop in the womb. What if this happens and continues? In the story Piecework, poor women earn a living by renting out their wombs for industrial piecework production of high-end organic machinery. In this chilling, award-nominated tale, a master of modern science fiction lets us glimpse an all-too-possible near future when science, economics, and individual dignity clash across the most intimate battlefield of all. In this story, the way I remember it, I read it like 30 years ago, before a woman can give birth to a child, she has to rent her womb out to do this kind of piecework, where they do incubate all sorts of things in a woman's womb. And that's what just reading your thing reminded me about, that if maybe mothers, maybe it was adapted that whatever it is she truly is, if you could use, like if you were going to repopulate a planet, what if you had a machine that had a biological womb where you could actually, instead of taking cattle or gestate, that you could actually create things inside of you. They were programmed, and you would literally give birth to other species in your womb because you're a machine or artificial creation, a replicant or whatever. So your womb could serve to, so you come to a planet, you have to populate its ecosystem. And so why not have like replicant wombs inside artificial machines or people or whatever that are designed to provide whatever the planet needs for terraforming or something. I didn't know that was the end of Raised by Wolves, but that's the first thing that it reminded me of, was this story Piecework. And you know what? I'm going to put this in the chat where you can, David Brin is a favorite of mine. So here is a link to that story where you can go to. So check that out. So Glambot, you know what? I'm sorry that your girlfriend felt this way, but I would try and point out to her, isn't it interesting? I mean, you might think it was a big what the fuck moment, but the question then is to ask yourself, why is this the way it is? Why do they choose to answer? What does it mean? What does it mean? So yeah. Pedro Ferreira is here. Ferreira? Hi, Rob. Before I ask the question I was going to ask, I would like to address Sean's message to you read out yesterday. In it, he was annoyed you didn't like Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek and kept referencing my favorite Star Trek movie, Generations, as a reference point. This led you to go off on a bit about Generations again because you don't think it's a good reference point. Maybe Sean wasn't around for my brief analysis of the movie and why I don't feel it's flawed, but I find it frustrating him using it in comparison to Lower Decks. For all of its flaws, Generations is 10 times better than anything Kurtzman has produced. I continuously find myself having to defend one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. Sean isn't making it easy. I personally have no issue with Data's humor in Generations because it was played straight, not like in Star Trek Today where everyone acts as though they're in on the big joke. Difference. Big difference. Gatekeeping doesn't exist. Only elitist or loyal fans who do want everyone to think the same way as they do. There is no gatekeeper, no keymaster, only Zool. We know Generations is a flawed movie. A comparison to modern Star Trek isn't necessary because it brings unfair criticism. Sean, my man, what are you doing? I don't need an underrated movie held up as a target again. I apologize, I've been triggered by his letter. It's just every time a new bit of Kurtzman Trek news is announced on social media, I keep seeing people use Data's Generations fist bump gif in response. I hate to see that movie used by modern Trek fans to say they like whatever rubbish the franchise has announced next. Cue Napoleon Dynamite long 7-second sigh. As for the actual point of my letter, Alex Kurtzman recently said that he has Star Trek mapped out until 2027. I don't believe that. I haven't seen any mapping out of Star Trek at all since 2017, which sounds like a nightmare. Even if his contract runs until 2025, who's to say the next person who takes over won't carry on the ideas that he's laid out? Has he laid out ideas? You questioned in your last stream, maybe you're just getting too old to enjoy what Star Trek has to offer. I could quote that line from The Undiscovered Country a third time in a letter to you by now. But Rob, you of all people know the answer to Spock's question. One of the major problems here is CBS is using its power to target YouTubers, and YouTube is happy to oblige. YouTubers like Mecha Random are being suffocated by CBS because of criticism. Interestingly, this goes back to Sean's message. If someone isn't allowed to criticize something, how can something improve? I keep seeing on the official Twitter account the Unite hashtag. Does uniting fandom mean canceling out criticism or differing opinions? Where does it end? A better question I'd like to ask you, Rob, is if CBS keeps putting pressure on YouTube to cancel out YouTubers like Mecha, Midnight's Edge, etc., where will it lead? It will lead to camps where we're all stuck in ovens and exterminated. And I don't mean that as hyperbole. We're already halfway on our way there now. I mean, the way people treat one another, and even over things like Star Trek and the fan communities that we have here, even me. I mean, I don't ever have somebody who is a pro-modern Star Trek fan. Sean is about the only one who offers cogent, he spends a lot of time writing me very thoughtful responses, and I appreciate them. That's why I read them. But I'm always attacked, and it always becomes personal. The attacks always become personal from them because they don't know why they like Star Trek. They just know that they like it, and that's fine. I like it. It's fun. You don't necessarily have to know why you like it. But if you don't know, if you can't defend it, then don't come after people that can defend things. Just lay back and go, that guy's being a douche. I don't want to talk to him. But no, it always descends into personal attacks. I don't get that. The only people I personally attack are the writers. And I don't necessarily attack them by name. I just attack the writing staff in general. Because they should all know better. They should do better. They're getting paid a lot of money to work on that show, too. Anyway, I'm glad Throg came to your rescue with toilet paper. He knew you were in trouble and helped. You obviously park your toilet seats in the same bathroom. Then again, your detractors are always saying you're full of shit. So maybe that's what they always mean by that. Kind regards, Pedro. Well, Pedro, it's always good to get a letter from you. Thanks for writing in. Yeah, I don't understand, man. I mean, the funny thing is science fiction fans have been debating these things at conventions and things since forever. As Rick Berman told me when I was interviewing him for the Star Trek: The Next Generation Blu-rays, he credits the rise of the internet with two things, and he's correct: pornography. Oh, I didn't mean to flip anybody off. Pornography and Star Trek. It was people watching porn and people arguing about Star Trek that gave the internet its power, and he's not wrong. Not wrong. So yeah. Well, listen, I'm over time, man. I still got a lot of letters to get through. But this is interesting. Damien Zeri asks, this is a very important question. Damien Zeri says, if you do not use my content, this is for the film festival, is it still mine or have I given you the rights to it by submitting? Let me be clear. If you submit a movie to the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival, we claim no rights over your intellectual property or your movie. The only thing that we claim, the only thing that we ask is that we exclusively are allowed to post your film on the Burnettwork YouTube channel exclusively through February 28th of 2021. That is it. We claim no rights to your work. No rights to your IP. If because of your movie, if it were to go viral and a major studio came after you and made a deal and gave you $5 million to develop your short film and turn it into a movie, we claim no rights to that. That is yours. Your work is yours. All we're doing is showing it. We just ask that we're able to host it on the channel for a couple more months so people can look at it. Hopefully, and the only reason we ask for that is so people come to the channel, watch these movies, and hopefully see all the movies and like the idea of having an intergalactic film festival so we can have another one. That is it. You retain all rights to your films, whether we show it or not. And if we show it, it's yours. If we don't show it, it's yours. And look, if your film, because it's being shown on this channel, if it goes viral and you get picked up and you make a deal, then I just want you to remember that you can say that because the Patrick Keller and Dieter Bastian made a movie and I watched and said, we should have a film festival, that it was this YouTube channel, the very existence of this channel and this community, most of all, the Post-Geek Singularity community, because I wouldn't have known Dieter Bastian or Patrick Keller had I not had this YouTube channel. Wouldn't have known them at all. So it was this community that led to you making a deal. So when your film finally comes out and you're being interviewed on, I don't know, whatever your talk show, if you ever get on the Graham Norton show, because one of my dreams is to go on the Graham Norton show by making something that makes me worthy of going on the Graham Norton show. If you ever find yourself on Graham Norton, just remember, you can say, you know what? I owe my entire career to this crazy film festival this YouTuber decided to make. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. So your content is yours. Always, we claim no rights. All we say, and when you sign the form, you just agree to one thing, and that's allowing us to have exclusive access. We host your film exclusively until February 28th. That is it. And then afterwards, it'll stay up on the channel, but you can do whatever you want with it. We claim no rights, no ownership rights to your movie. It is yours. 100%. Good question, though. You know what? I think I'm going to leave it there. Why don't I leave it there? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, however you identify across these 28 known galaxies, this brings an end to Robservations episode number 535. I want to thank everybody who supports the channel. Thank you very much. As always, I want to thank my moderating staff, of course, Mike Bodden, Greg Smith, the Richard for everything that they do. Who else is here? The Richard is here. I don't know who else is here. Greg Smith is here too. Robert Priso is here. I think Joshua Levesque was here. And anybody else who's here, I want to thank all of them for what they do. The Richard's always having really cool watch parties. Remember, we are going to have a Whining About Movies and Robservations Halloween Zoom party. But costumes are mandatory. Don't let me down. On Saturday the 24th, Elizabeth and I are going to co-host with Candida and Claude, the first family, or the first couple, the only couple, of the official couple of the Burnettwork. And all you have to do is wear a costume, but, it can be like this. Doesn't matter what it is. But you have to have a costume on or we're not going to let you into the Zoom party. I do want to remind everybody, yes, we now have membership channels, or memberships that you can get. You can just click on and join. You can join for 99 cents a month, and that's it. But what we're going to try and do is use the proceeds generated from memberships to start expanding programming. I mean, there's equipment I need to buy, stuff I need to get. That's what we want to expand the channel and make it more interesting, and do more stuff, and more graphics and stuff like that. Because wouldn't it be cool if I could, like I said, walk around here? I would like that. Anyway. We will be back tonight. Elizabeth and I will be back at 7:30 to talk a little Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. La 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 la. That's one of the great themes. And by the way, that's exactly how it sounds. Anyway, yes. And remember, tomorrow and Thursday, we have premieres for the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Today, we the longest film debuted. I think it's 18 minutes. Blue from a Yakima filmmaker. Tomorrow, we have a children's video. A children's music video about wearing a mask. And then on Thursday, we have a short film about the color red and what it means from a musician and filmmaker. So, world premieres. Both tomorrow's and especially Thursdays are very short, and I hope you enjoy them. It's really interesting seeing what we're getting. I thoroughly enjoy it, all the different stuff that we're getting. Now, you know what? Before I jump, I've seen that Nathan Taylor, he was like, Nick Parrish is here. He said, "What's up, Rob?" So I was reminiscing on the early 2000s era of movies. Those are good times, but I also think it was when the age of movie stars truly faded. I know it must be the end of Hollywood when Hollywood tried to push Sam Worthington and Jai Courtney and Paul Bettany. People don't remember that as the next action stars. Was that not a weird time or what? Well, Nick, you might be right. I mean, look, Paul Bettany is great. I love Paul Bettany. And Sam Worthington, I like Sam Worthington in Avatar, and Jai Courtney was a little generic, but yes, it was a weird time. but you always have to have new people fill the roles of the old people. Yeah. So, and by the way, here's something that I'm going to throw out to the Post-Geek Singularity. So this shelf here, I want to fill with action figures the same way that I've brought the Seven Samurai here, right? So I can't decide what should I put on this shelf. What kind of figures? Now, I'm gonna offer some suggestions, and I want you guys, maybe we'll have to have a poll somewhere, but I could either put like, okay, I could put only Jedi, and when I say that, it would be all eras of Jedi, or, you know, like I got a lot of clone troopers. I could put clone troopers up with Anakin and General Kenobi, or I could put classic movie characters, everybody from like Vito Corleone. I've got Charlie Chaplin, James Dean. So classic movie characters. I could put superhero figures like, I don't know, Iron Man, whatever. The Justice League. I don't know. What I want is I keep looking at this, and I'm going to push the books here and push them all down because I really love seeing the figures behind me. So I'm going to leave that up to you. What figures should be on this shelf mirroring the Seven Samurai? Because I like the fact that you've got, well, this is Yojimbo. Then you have Nathan Algren, Tom Cruise. That's a bootleg figure. Then all the Seven Samurai. And then up in the corner is George Lucas. But if I had like all the Jedi or clone troopers or whatever here, I'd probably move George Lucas over there. And I think they actually do make an Akira Kurosawa figure. Or I could put motorcycles there. I could put like the light cycle from Tron. I could put the Akira, the 6 scale Canadian, his bike. I don't know. I think it has to be figures though to mirror this. But I'm going to leave it up to you. I find this, I mean, I like seeing these big omnibuses there, but I think I don't know, it's up to you. Because I'm, changing around the Robservatory. Changing it up. So what do you guys think? How do you feel about it? I'll leave it up to you. Leave a comment. And on that note, I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel in all the ways that they do and all the ways that you do. And I love that please sample all the films for the Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival. They're all on the top of the Burnettwork YouTube page. And if you want to leave a comment, sometimes these filmmakers have never made anything, and this is the first time that they've made something, much less enter it into a film festival to be shown in a public venue, which takes a lot of courage. So check it out and leave a comment. Hopefully you'll be encouraging. I mean, I feel like I'm back in film school again watching all these movies. It's actually kind of fun. And on that note, I will be back on the John Campea Show tomorrow. I'll be back on this show. I will be doing Whining About Movies tomorrow. And I think on Thursday, so we'll do Thursday. Thursday is Let the Right One In. And Saturday is An American Werewolf in London for Whining About Movies. Tonight is Rosemary's Baby. And on that note, I say to everybody, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better day.